Personally, I think everybody could benefit from the home visiting programs.
I think that as a parent now, I'm grateful for support more than I was before.
I filled out that form not knowing what I was doing. I am very, very grateful that I did it because it's really helping me a lot.
Bueno, creo que por mi parte esperaba algo totalmente diferente, como un programa más frío, por decir algo, no tan cercano a la familia. Y a través del programa nos hemos dado cuenta que también pasa a ser una familia con nosotros porque nos apoya en los momentos difíciles o cuando nos hemos visto en dificultades.
Well, I was a new mom and I had no experience taking care of a newborn.
There isn't like a book on how to raise a kid.
We come from like a lot of family history of, drugs, violence, alcoholism, so we didn't want our daughter to experience any of that.
The thought that a parent was supposed to be loving, nurturing, supposed to be there for their kid, provide food, shelter, joy, and going in, becoming a parent for her, I had no clue how to provide that.
Cómo pensar educarla, cómo educar a un hijo porque pues nosotros nunca, es la primera vez que íbamos a ser padres.
What I think parents should know about home visiting is that you can learn a lot of new things and tips and tricks, how to take care of the baby and what to do, and if you're, stuck in a routine and everything being monotonous, like they give you new resources and new tools how to handle parenthood.
It was nice to have them kind of guiding me, even though I was not a first-time mom. I felt like a first-time mom.
It totally blew my mind over time. So much information that I had no idea about. She was straightforward when, teaching me this stuff and answered any of my questions. Just a really positive experience.
What I think that parents could benefit with the program is just having someone here for you, especially for first-time parents. It can be very isolating and it can be very lonely, and having the home visitor changes that and it feels very good.
For me, having a home visitor is like having a second mom there.
A lot has changed. I'm definitely more knowledgeable taking care of her, and I know that anytime I need advice or help from somebody, I can just call her.
It's just that little positive nudge to, hey, I'm noticing something, let's find a way how to change it. And she's like, you know what, Amanda, let's pick you up, dust you off, and let's go over to, see about either getting your driver's license or seeing about, going to college, see if we can start something for you.
It's totally worth it. Like, even if you're on the fence at first, you don't feel like having a stranger coming in your house and teaching you about your little one, do it anyway. You get the help that you need. You get professional advice on things you may not know about your child. The fact that the program has no fees or anything, it's all totally free, is fantastic.
Yo creo que si conozco a alguien que está próxima a ser mamá, lo primero que haría sería recomendarle el programa porque te entrega mucho apoyo, mucha información y más que nada como apoyo emocional, una guía, te da una visión diferente de cómo es ser papá aquí, quizás en este país.
Sí, pues es un bonito programa. Porque pues es buena persona la señora y los ha atendido muy bien.
Pensé que nada más iba a ser un programa de orientación quizás para los nuevos padres, pero creo que nos llevamos una linda sorpresa porque Gaby es una persona muy cercana a nosotros, es como parte de nuestra familia, siempre ha estado dispuesta a ayudarnos y a escucharnos con nuestras dudas sobre la paternidad, y en nuestro caso, que estamos solos en este país, ha sido como de mucha ayuda.
Es un gran apoyo para nuevos padres, y más aún si están en nuestra situación, que somos extranjeros, que nuestra familia y amigos, como dice Carla, están en otro país, lejos. Entonces sí, viene muy bien el programa para apoyarse tanto emocional y como anímicamente, y bueno, en varios aspectos del programa, que nos ayuda a seguir adelante con esta nueva aventura.
Te ayuda como a ver los distintos recursos que tiene la comunidad para nuevos papás, entonces creo que es de gran ayuda.
No queda mucho que agregar, pero lo veo de la misma forma.
Que hemos aprendido algunas cosas aquí y pues los han ayudado, como este programa los ha ayudado para seguir creciendo a la bebé, como con buenos consejos y así.
Sí, y creo que también ha sido muy importante el tema de apoyarnos con el libro y saber qué actividades hacer con Máximo de acuerdo a su edad, cómo estimularlo, cómo cuidarlo de los peligros de la casa, como cosas que uno como papá nuevo no conoce, claro.
Pues a mí me gustaría que lo siguiéramos visitando aquí en la biblioteca de Covelo. Está tranquilo y muy bonito aquí.
Cuando no nos podemos reunir, nos comunicamos por Zoom o una llamada telefónica o por texto.
Donde nos visite, porque ha sido nuestra casa. A veces nosotros vamos a Willits y puede ser en el parque. Gaby llega, como hacemos un resumen de cómo ha ido nuestra semana o qué hemos hecho de nuevo, cómo va el trabajo. Luego hacemos las actividades del libro. Vemos si podemos hacer un juguetito nuevo para Máximo. A veces ella lo evalúa, cómo está su sentido motriz, qué ha aprendido de nuevo, nuevas palabras, y jugamos un ratito y conversamos.
A mí personalmente también me ayudó mucho a obtener mi licencia a conducir, que era un objetivo que teníamos en cuanto a la familia, sí, para poder estar tranquilos, así que encuentro que ha sido fundamental el apoyo.
El objetivo del programa es que las familias estén bien, y que las familias estén bien significa niños felices, niños sanos, y eso en un futuro es adultos sanos y un mundo mejor. Entonces está bueno.
Planning Commission, May 18th, 2023, is now being called to order, and I'm going to read how this meeting is going to be addressed. Today's meeting is a hybrid meeting of the Planning Commission, with participants both in person and digitally. The public may participate digitally in meetings by sending comments to pbscommissions@mendocinocounty.org or orally via telecomment in lieu of personal attendance. All public comment will be made available by the Commission by the commissioners, staff, and the general public after processing by staff and can be viewed as attachments to this meeting agenda on the Planning Commission agenda page. To submit comments via telecomment, please use the telecomment form found at www.mendocinocounty.org/government/planning-building-services/meeting-agendas. And may we call roll call, please.
Commissioner Ramos. Commissioner Jones.
Present.
Commissioner Purnell. Commissioner Pollen.
Here.
Chair Wiedemann.
Here. So, do we have determination of legal notice?
Yeah, legal notice has been determined on each matter on the agenda.
Thank you. Agenda item number 3, do we have a director's report?
I will have a very brief director's report today. I'm Julia Krog, Planning and Building Services Director. I just want to note for the Commission, we have had a couple staffing changes recently. We did lose a couple planners that have gone to other opportunities in other jurisdictions, as well as we will be sending out a recruitment for replacement of those planning staff members. And then we also have a recruitment out there for building inspector 1 and 2 right now. So just wanted to put that out there in case there's any qualified candidates that are interested. And that concludes my director's report. Thank you.
Thank you. That is a short report. Moving on, because we have obviously a fairly full house today, agenda item number 4, matters from the public. Members of the public are welcome to address the Planning Commission on items not listed on the agenda, but within the jurisdiction of the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission is prohibited by law from taking action on matters not on the agenda. Individuals wishing to address the Planning Commission under matters from the public may do so via email or Zoom. For information on each of these methods, call the Planning and Building Department at 707-234-6650 or visit www.mendocinocounty.org/government/planning-building-services/meeting-agendas. All correspondences will be attached to the item and made available online on the Planning Commission agenda page. If any members of the public log into Zoom meeting wishing to speak under public expression and have not completed the telecomment form, please use the raise hand features to allow staff to add you to the meeting. Instructions for using the raise hand features are found on the agenda for this meeting. Do we have any requests for telecomment under public expression?
I believe we have Anna Marie Weibel wishing to speak.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello? Okay. Since 2019, I shared with you my concern about wireless communication facilities, the 1996 Telecommunications Act, and the Mendocino County guidelines for the development of them from 2015. This Telecommunications Act determines that all these towers are below the standards determined by the FCC. Wireless radiation safety limits are inadequate to protect public health, according to a leading scientist who helped set these limits up in 1990. The result of the FCC's lack of accountability is cumulative and includes incalculable environmental damage. After receiving hundreds of comments urging the FCC to recognize electromagnetic sensitivity disabled community and prioritize fiber technology, the FCC has done neither. Despite mounting evidence that radio frequency radiation from wireless technology is harmful to people and the environment, they're charging forward. A major new paper by the International Commission on Wireless Technology presents a case for revision of human exposure limits and calls for an immediate moratorium on 5G. This month, Massachusetts voters voted to consider telecom applications incomplete until the FCC meets the court's remand. About a year ago, we had roughly 442,000 low Earth orbit satellites operating, approved, or proposed. We don't need additional towers. We now have smart oceans and the Internet of Underwater Things. The governments, research laboratories, commercial and military interests were collaborating on these plans. They did not consult the animals and plants of the ocean. Mendocino County did not consult with pregnant mothers, their children, the schools, with people whose health is compromised if they like being surrounded by more and more towers. Studies show that children's brain absorb more radiation than adults. A UK film producer recently published an animation film that is breaking taboos about the disability of electromagnetic hypersensitivity, which is estimated to afflict 26.5 million Europeans alone, restricting access to employment and necessitating social withdrawal to avoid exposure. In 2006, the Mendocino County Supervisor adopted the precautionary principle. Why do we not respect this document, act accordingly, and incorporate it in the county's wireless guidelines? I also want to ask you to address 6B before you address 6A, because I believe this is a short item and you have a lot of people who are interested in 6A. Please consider a bylaw change, as we now have a smaller commission, and in case of an even number of commissioners, the public cannot appeal any situation that they need to appeal if necessary. So thank you very much for your time and interest.
Thank you very much for that input. But as far as changing the agenda lineup, we're not going to do that due to there's so many people who are sitting here and probably waiting on the hybrid Zoom meeting. So we're going to keep the agenda as it is presented today. With that, do we have any more public expression?
We don't have anyone on Zoom.
All right, thank you. We're moving on to agenda item number 5. It's the consent calendar, and for April 20th, 2023 and May 4th, 2023. This was for the approval of the minutes. And Commissioner Pollan, do you have any comments regarding or changes to the minutes?
I do not.
Commissioner Jones?
No changes.
Can I have a motion to adopt the Pardon? Oh. No. That goes on the next one.
Public can comment on the consent.
Okay. So I'll open public comment on the consent calendar. Do we have any public comments on the consent calendar?
We have none on Zoom.
I didn't think so. Okay. With that, do I have a motion to adopt the minutes?
I would move that we approve the consent calendar.
I'll second that.
Could we?
Yes.
Commissioner Pollan?
Yes.
Chair Wiedemann?
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right. Great. Moving now on to agenda item number 6A, our regular calendar. And the item is case R 2021-0002, rezone request to establish a cannabis prohibition CP combining district over 207 assessor parcels in Redwood Valley. I'm noting that Commissioner Ramos recused himself from this meeting. He may show up later in the afternoon. With that, I want to open up the public. I'm going to open up the public hearing Do we have any, has there been any correspondence and telephone calls received?
All correspondence have been posted to the public website.
And then we're going to have the staff presentation.
Good morning, Commissioners. Russ Ford, Senior Planner and Project Planner for this application. Thank you for the introduction. So this is Rezone 2021-0002, which is an application to establish a Cannabis Prohibition CP combining district in the Redwood Valley area. The proposed district lies in the community of Redwood Valley, about 1/10 of a mile north of downtown Redwood Valley. The district is bound roughly on the west by East Road, on the north by Road I, on the east by Colony Drive, and on the south by Road D. The district as currently proposed contains 207 assessors parcel numbers, which comprise 198 individual legal parcels. So the authority for establishing a CP combining district comes from section 20.119 of the Mendocino County Code, and there are 3 primary requirements. The first is that the district may be applied to an area where a majority of the parcels allow residential uses by right. Secondly, a CP district shall be composed of no fewer than 10 legally created parcels. And finally, the applicants must include a demonstration of support for the proposal by more than 60% of the affected property owners at the time of application. Said demonstration may be in the form of one owner's signature per legal parcel or an alternative demonstration of support as approved by the county. So the proposed colony district is comprised of parcels zoned agricultural and rural residential. Both of these zoning classifications allow residential uses by right. The proposed district contains 198 legal parcels. And at the time of application, the applicants included letters of support from 121 of the 198 legal parcels for a support level of 61%. And this little exhibit shows where those initial support letters came from, the green parcels. So the application as proposed meets the minimum requirements for adoption per section 20.119. However, there are some additional considerations the Commission may wish to discuss today. Zoning and zone changes in general are a policy decision, which can make it difficult to apply the same sort of technical analysis that accompanies other projects. So based on other rezoning projects, staff would like to offer a few other factors that the Commission may wish to discuss. The first is the consistency with the general plan. Now, the general plan was adopted long before the adoption of the cannabis ordinances, but analysis was done at the time those ordinances were proposed, and they were deemed to be consistent with the relevant elements of the general plan. This project has also demonstrated compliance with section 20.119, which is itself consistent with the general plan. Secondly, the location, size, and shape of the proposed district, including if it is appropriate to include all the proposed parcels in the district. So as we mentioned before, approximately 60% of the parcels in the district are zoned for agriculture, which allows commercial cultivation. The remaining parcels are zoned rural residential, which does not allow commercial cultivation. It's already prohibited in that zoning district. So staff has had discussion regarding the appropriateness of applying a restrictive district to a base zone that already restricts that specific use and what benefit that might add. Ultimately, it was determined that such a process, while superfluous, would violate no planning principles, and additionally, establishing a CP district would provide a kind of bulwark against any possible future change in zoning allowances for commercial cultivation. Because again, remember, zoning is a policy change, so a future Board of Supervisors could choose to open rural residential to commercial cultivation. Third item to consider, the effect of the CP district on existing and future land uses, including pending applications. And these bullet points are at the top of page 6 of the staff report for your reference. So the immediate effect of adoption would be the restriction on new applications for commercial cultivation. Personal cultivation would not be affected by this district, and just for clarification, personal cultivation is defined as 100 square feet of canopy or less, 6 plants or fewer. So that would not be affected by this district. Pending applications would likely need to be reviewed individually with the support of legal counsel to determine how the department should proceed. Any commercial sites currently operating legally within the district would have a grace period of 3 years to cease operations. So there are currently 3 sites within the proposed district. 2 of these, highlighted here toward the bottom of the map, are relocation sites that were sunset out of their original locations at the close of phase 1. The 3rd site, which is highlighted here roughly in the center, it's just not shown on this kind of out-of-date aerial map, it was operating illegally until recent code enforcement action to bring them into compliance. To the best of my knowledge, these sites are considered to be in good standing by the Cannabis Department at this point, which means that they have their state licenses and they're up to date on taxes and fees. So the 3 considerations: consistency with the general plan, the configuration of the district, the effect of the district on the land uses, and then finally the effect of the district on the public health, safety, morals, peace, comfort, convenience, prosperity, and general welfare, as cited in Chapter 20 of the County Code. This is just straight out of the zoning code, so it may be worth considering if adoption of the district would affect those things one way or another. As zoning is a policy decision, staff is not in a position to offer a recommendation to the Commission on this project other than to say that it meets the minimum requirements found in Section 20.119. We do have 3 possible options for the Commission's action today. So option 1, by resolution, the Planning Commission recommends that the Board of Supervisors find the project exempt from CEQA and approve the requested rezone as proposed by the applicant based on the facts and findings contained in the resolution. Option 2, by resolution, the Planning Commission recommends denial of the requested rezone as proposed by the applicant. And option 3, which is kind of a hybrid of the 2, by resolution, the Planning Commission recommends modification of the boundaries of the proposed CP district based on the facts and findings. So to summarize, the 3 actions before you this morning: recommend approval as presented, recommend denial as presented, or recommend modifications. And that concludes staff's presentation, and we're available for comments.
Thank you very much. My fellow commissioners, I'm inviting you to have some questions for staff. And Commissioner Jones?
Oh, sure. Yes, I always have questions. You know me. So I'm wondering if it's possible for you to reshuffle your PowerPoint deck so it shows the votes in favor of the district followed by where the cultivation sites are, just so we can see sort of how those compare with each other.
Sure, let me see what I can do here.
It was just a little hard to, not knowing the neighborhood perfectly, how those compare.
So here's the slide with the map showing the initial support levels. I didn't include a map of the cultivation sites, but I can show you just with the cursor. There are 2 sites that are down here on these parcels. Those were the relocation sites. The 3rd site is located here, roughly in the center.
Okay, that's super helpful. Thank you. Sure. And then also, just for the public, if you could clarify sort of the legal position of the existing cultivation with regards to the ordinance that allows the overlay district, I think that would be helpful for everybody to understand.
Defer that to council.
Deputy County Counsel Matthew Gudrowski. Just looking at the ordinance chapter itself, if there's a CP district established, it says that existing permitted cannabis cultivation sites or permitted facilities located within a newly adopted combined district are permitted to continue operations for 3 years. So unless a site has actually a permit issued, then if upon the adoption of the district by the board and its effective date, those applications, I think, would cease. They would not be permitted to continue to get their permit.
Okay, thank you for that.
Commissioner Pollan?
Thank you, Chair Wiedemann. A couple quick questions. You had mentioned that 60% of the parcels are ag parcels and 40% are rural residential. Is that by number of parcels, or is that by area of ground?
That was calculated by area within the overall district.
Okay, thank you. And then you'd showed that slide that had the initial indications of support for this district, and I did note that we'd received some correspondence subsequently, some people withdrawing their support. Does that reflect that, or it does not?
It does not reflect a lot of the more recent changes we have in the application initially came in several years ago, and so we did an update before the first PC hearing. There were a number of parcels that had changed ownerships, and those were removed. There were also an additional number of letters of support from parcels that were not initially included, so those were added.
Do we?
If I may, I'll just add as well that the requirement for 60% landowner support is at the time of application. This commission has seen other applications before that have dropped below that support percentage, but the way the ordinance is written is that it is to be demonstrated at the time of application.
Okay, but do we have a sense on what that percentage stands at currently?
Yes.
And what is that number?
Overall, I believe it's at 66% now.
Okay, thank you. And then you noted that our third option was to modify this. What modifications are within our purview today?
Well, I believe that would be the discretion of the commission. If you wanted to include some other parcels that you thought made a logical extension of the district, or wanted to remove some that you did not believe fit with it, that's going to be part of the deliberation today.
If I may just add, if the commission wished to shrink the size of the district, you could still have that discussion. If you wish to expand the size of the district, we would need to do renoticing, because that would then include properties that were not previously aware that they would potentially be underneath this CP district, and may also extend the boundaries for our noticing requirements.
Okay, thank you very much. That's all I have for right now.
Through the chair, Deputy County Council Matthew Gadrowski, if I could add one note to that. The parameters we're talking about here, there are the requirements and the ordinance standards just for the district on their own are fairly straightforward. As noted in the staff report by Mr. Ford, this is a legislative act. So with that, it still is bound by rational basis, provisions in terms of shape and size. And so if there are discussions about either the district as proposed or any expansion or shrinkage of that, those are the considerations we'd have to be looking at to making sure the commission makes statements about and findings regarding is this is a neighborhood character district. It reflects that, and its shape is rational.
Commissioner Jones.
Sorry, I have follow-up questions based on your questions. So one, I'd like to hear if staff has any recommended changes in the district size or configuration. And two, I'd like to know, in terms of the additional noticing requirement, does that necessitate another hearing at the Planning Commission, or can that happen concurrently with the hearing to the Board of Supervisors?
I believe that would come back to the Planning Commission.
Okay.
Yes.
Thanks.
May I be able to respond to staff before we hear your answer?
Okay, yeah.
That'd be appreciated. So Commissioner Paulin, you were done responding to staff or asking. I had a question on the two cultivation permits for the two parcels that were relocation. Are they in order with the program, in the sense of, have they met the findings that are needed for that currently with their permit?
I can respond to that. I did check with the Cannabis program yesterday, and they did not have any concerns at those time, but those applications are still under review with the Cannabis program. So I can't say an absolute definitive, but there weren't any immediate concerns presented in the conversation I had with the program.
Okay, so if they're under review, are they permitted? Do they have a legal permit? And this is for staff, not for audience.
Deputy County Council Matthew Gadrowski, no, they have not received a permit. They are under review for a permit.
So
They are under review.
You need to, speak clearly.
They have not been issued a permit. So under review means they're in process, but they have not been issued a permit.
All right. And what about the third site that you referred to, as far as it's pending permits also, but can you elaborate on that, please?
Yeah, to the best of my understanding, that site is in the process of being brought into conformance through some recent code action, and that would require building permits for all structures and application for an admin permit for the cultivation site itself.
And if I may just note, they have filed for a phase 3 cultivation permit on that particular site. And so they are in application submittal. I don't have a good progress update on that because I believe that application was just filed last month or possibly the month prior.
Okay, that's my questions right now. So I'll pass it back to Commissioner Jones's question.
Yes, just to address your question about the configuration. This is the configuration you're seeing today that is proposed is actually the second one. It was an update. Staff did have some concerns about the initial one, which seemed to kind of exclude some parcels that would logically be part of the neighborhood. So we did recommend some changes. The applicants took those under consideration and submitted this current application, so staff has no concerns with it. No.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Pollan.
Thank you. All these follow-up questions based on the great questions of our fellow commissioners. So I had a question just in terms of the process of what under review means as opposed to actually having a permit issued. If I'm not mistaken, and I might be, the Cannabis Department, a majority of the applications that have been submitted to the Cannabis Department are still under review. Is that correct? The actual number of permits that have actually been granted is relatively small compared to the number that have been submitted?
That is correct.
Do we have any idea of the sort of rough percentage?
I don't want to quote any numbers because I fear I would misquote it, but the cannabis program has been doing regular updates at the General Government Committee as well as to the Board of Supervisors, and I believe are taking steps to try to streamline the review and the ordinance to be able to move through those permits at a faster pace.
Right, but the fact that a permit is still under review doesn't necessarily indicate any faults or positive attributes to it. It's just where it is in the process currently.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask one more follow-up?
Commissioner Jones.
Sorry, one more follow-up
No.
question. Can you just remind me what phase 3 is? It's been a while since I looked at that ordinance, probably a year and a half.
Absolutely. So phase 1 and 2 were for existing cultivators, legacy cultivators that could demonstrate proof of prior cultivation. Phase 3 was for new cultivation sites, individuals that could not demonstrate proof of prior cultivation in compliance with the ordinance.
Okay, thank you.
Actually, Deputy County Counsel Matthew Kudrowski, just to clarify something, Phase 2 is not for just existing. Phase 2 was an intermediate step between the end of Phase 1 and the beginning of Phase 3, but was only on industrial properties.
Thank you for that. Any further questions from the commission to staff? All right. So I'm going to now ask the applicant's presentation. So I invite the applicant to, if you're in this room, come to the mic. Or if you're Zoom, okay, please come to the mic. And please state your name and...
Good morning. My name is Kathleen Gilly. I have lived at our home in Redwood Valley.
Excuse me, can you move the microphone closer to your mouth, both for us and for the people that aren't in the room? Thank you.
Okay. Is this better? Okay. My name is Kathleen Gilly. I have lived at our home in Redwood Valley for almost 45 years. I will be presenting the reasons we filed an application for a rezone to create a commercial cannabis prohibition combining district to prohibit commercial cannabis operations per Mendocino County Code Chapter 2119. Our neighborhood vineyard sold in February 21. We watched as the heart of the vineyard was ripped out, a major road was put in, 14 hoop houses were constructed, water tanks were brought in, the pond was pumped dry. The traffic on the two major roads that access the vineyard increased, along with more activity at the hoop house area, often at night. We checked to see if there was a permit to grow, and there was not. We decided we needed to do what we could to stop it. We heard about other areas in Ukiah that had successfully formed cannabis prohibition zones, so we reached out to them for guidance. We began the process of notifying our neighbors of our intention to form a rezone. Originally, we were going to keep our district confined to a small area, but word got out and requests to expand came in from other neighborhoods. we realized their areas were already being negatively impacted. We believe it is appropriate to include rural residential properties in our proposed district because there is a precedence to include them, as evidenced by the adoption and current existence of the two other cannabis prohibition districts, specifically in the Deerwood and Boonville, Glenwoody and Bisbee, Fracchia neighborhoods. These two CP districts both include smaller parcels which are used solely for single-family residential purposes. Additionally, there is nothing in the CP ordinance which disallows RR properties from being included in an opt-out district. Therefore, we petitioners of these said properties who are being negatively impacted argue that we should be included in the proposed district along with the ag properties who have likewise petitioned to be included. Only after we filed our application did we realize that perhaps going through the Redwood Valley Municipal Advisory Council might have been a wise option. Our main goal at the time was to file as soon as possible. Our reasons for filing this application were never intended to affect legal growers. Our concern is directed at the influx of new mega growers, and with our government promoting massive growth expansion, along with allowing the large grows to take over our area without adequate input from those of us most affected. A majority voted for legalizing medical and recreational grows in 2016, not large cannabis commercial farms and hoop houses located in residential neighborhoods. Following our opening presentation, you will hear from residents and vineyard growers who are supportive of our opt-out project, along with those who are in opposition. Our major concerns from the start have been water, the environment, and safety. I would like to speak briefly in regards to the water issue. This year's rainfall doesn't mean the drought is over. One good season of precipitation isn't enough to eradicate the severe drought. We have had water restrictions off and on for many years. Currently, we have no new water sources to rely on. Cannabis plants grown indoors can have a 3 or 4 harvests a season, consuming excessive amounts of water. Many of us rely only on wells for water and are concerned that any new ones being drilled for large commercial grows will affect ours. Soon you will be shown a map of our proposed district with the grow sites being pointed out. You will see 2 existing hoop house complexes on Road D. One is very close to 6 houses on Land Lane and 4 houses on Road D. A new grow is proposed on Roads E and H. This is the property that motivated us to file our opt-out. We weren't surprised when helicopters and several law enforcement vehicles swooped in and busted this site for illegally growing 1,600 plants last summer. On the same day, this grower was also cited for 1,600 plants being illegally grown on property off of West Road in Redwood Valley. We wish to go on record as stating that we request no new applications be accepted and no new permits be granted or approved to grow commercial cannabis in our proposed district while we are in the application process for a CP combining district and before hearings and decisions are heard and made by the Mendocino County Planning Commissioners and the Board of Supervisors. The Mendocino Cannabis Ordinance, Chapter 10A-17 states, "Nothing in this chapter is intended, nor shall it be construed to allow persons to engage in conduct that endangers others or causes a public nuisance." We are applying for this opt-out zoning precisely because we do feel endangered and with these 2 grows. Commercial cannabis farms in this area have increased aggressively to the point they are causing a great public nuisance with extreme concerns over water safety and the environment. Thank you for listening to us today and being responsive to our concerns. We hope you will consider approving our application to the Board of Supervisors. I now turn this over to Francis, who will present a visual view of our district with a detailed map to help clarify and explain our rezone.
Please state your full name. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone, commissioners. My name is Frances Owen. I better put my glasses down so I can read what I'm supposed to say here. And I've lived at our home in Redwood Valley for 44 years. Can everyone hear me all right? No? Okay. It's hard to tell from up here. Is that better? Okay. So I'm going to present the map. Russ, is there any way you can blow it up just a little bit? It doesn't, I was sitting in the back and it's pretty hard to look at the detail. I have extra copies, about 5 if the commissioners would like them. Paper copies?
We have paper copies.
Oh, okay,
thank you.
great. Okay, so I'll just go ahead and get started here. Please note the heavy black lines as they were our original boundary lines. We first applied to create the CP Cannabis Prohibition District on September 7th, 2021. 5 months later, on February 23rd, we met with Planning Department staff and were informed we needed to revise our map boundaries so they appeared less gerrymandered. We were also questioned as to whether there is added value in including RR1 parcels, as RR1 zoning already prohibits commercial cannabis growing. We believe we will adequately address both of these issues today. There was never an effort to gerrymander support in order to form this CP district. On March 7th, within 2 weeks of our February meeting with Planning, we redefined our boundary lines and provided additional petitions in order to move along our application. We explained at the time that there was never an intent to rig numbers, but rather a naivete with regards to the process involved. When we began to canvass properties, many neighbors were happy we were trying to do something about the grows that had been allowed in. Many shared stories of how they were being negatively affected, as evidenced by the 40+ personal letters that have now been submitted. Excuse me. We were also met with some who expressed a desire to not be included due to concerns over fears of retribution, and some who were planning to sell. In the spirit of being good neighbors, and when it did not disrupt the requirement that properties be contiguous, we initially left out these properties. There was also an area we excluded as we did not feel safe accessing it due to gates and reports of possible active grows. And that's the big cutout along Road D. It looks like there's a face, kind of goes up. Looks like there's a mouth and a nose. We cut all that area out there. Moving on, the orange outline. Now, the orange outline indicates our updated, redefined boundaries. There is one cutout area near East Road, which we did not worry about as they are covered by a 600-foot park buffer. And the Redwood Valley Lions Club Park is right across East Road there to the left.
Excuse me 1 minute. Can you use your cursor to outline what she's referring to, please?
Oh, pointer would be good, yeah.
Could you repeat that again? Start a little back on your...
So I was talking about the orange outline indicates our updated, redefined boundaries. There's one cutout area near East Road, which is on the left-hand side, towards the bottom, which we did not worry about as they are already covered by a 600-foot park buffer. And the Redwood Valley Lions Club Park is right there.
I'm sorry, Francis, just to jump in real quick.
Sure.
I was looking at the wrong area. This was left out from the original application. The current application omits this portion down here.
Okay, so all the orange check marks throughout indicate the presence of single-family residences. There are blue check marks. The blue check marks indicate more homes slightly outside our district boundary. I think you can see them. They're outside the orange lines. As Kathleen mentioned a bit ago, when word got out we were undertaking this project, more areas asked to be included. Originally, we only planned on including the area between Road I and Road E. But one friend from East Road told a friend from Road D, and they immediately called us asking to be included. as the grow site there had been causing problems. When we saw how closely this grow encroached upon residential properties, we did not feel we could exclude them. It was not easy to say no to other areas wishing to be included, but canvassing rural neighborhoods is a very tedious, time-consuming process. We felt time was of the essence as a new grow was attempting to come in on roads E and H. Close to the core of downtown, there's a small subdivision comprised of 20 homes, which are the Adjournment and Gowan Way streets, and they have 2 ingress and egress points, which are East Road and Road E. There are 3 more small subdivisions off Land Lane on Road D, Witzel Lane off Road E, and Mesa Drive off Colony. Many more single-family homes run along the major roads, down private roads, and on agricultural vineyard properties. All of these homes use the major roads of East Road, Roads D, E, Colony, and Road I for the purposes of ingress and egress, as well as to walk our dogs, to walk ourselves, to retrieve mail, to ride our bikes, and occasionally a horse. During pot growing season, the traffic increases to the point where many feel unsafe doing the activities they so enjoy, and parts of our roads are now in shambles. There are also some parcels intermixed within the more densely populated areas that are larger parcels as indicated in yellow. A good case in point is near East Road. So you see there's a 9.4 there in yellow. There are 5 parcels ranging in size from 3.9 to 9.4 acres. The 4 clustered together are owned by 2 families who are related. They have petitioned to be part of our CP district, but should they decide to sell, we have no protection that new buyers would not come in with the intent to grow and might be allowed to do so, as they are over the 5-acre minimum needed to grow commercially. Mesa Drive and homes along Road I, while denoted in ag zones, are designated for land use as single-family residences and range from 1 acre to 11.5 acres. So again, as you can see in yellow, more commercial grows could currently be allowed among these small, tightly compacted residential areas. These larger parcels in the RR1 zoning is another reason why it is important to include these RR1 properties in our proposed district. Finally, I would point out the orange circles with a C in the middle. These are 10 current grow sites, of which 7 surround our district and 3 are within our district. Please note the 2 on Road D are in close proximity to a stream, which is a part of a freshwater forested shrub wetland, and the newest incoming site off roads E and H is close to a freshwater pond. We are most concerned because we do not believe these water sources are being monitored as far as consumption or quality control. We would be elated if the county or the owners would provide us with evidence to the contrary. We believe 10 mega commercial grows are extremely excessive for a roughly 4.5 square mile area. Conservatively, there are approximately 175 homes supporting conservatively 500 people in our proposed opt-out zone. Our finite water supply has been asked to support all of us, our pets, our natural wildlife, our food and flower gardens, our beautiful valley oaks, as well as vineyards for many years. Now it's being asked to support an additional 3 large cannabis grows where 7 others already exist nearby. We, roughly 130 petitioners now, whom have lived here for many years or generationally, strongly assert that we should have a greater voice than only 2 parties who do not reside here, have only been here 2 to 5 years, and who are unbeknownst to us. We pay property taxes to support government, which in turn is tasked to maintain our roads and protect our health, safety, and environment. We ask that you approve our opt-out application in good faith that you are willing to do so. Thank you very much for your time and consideration. And now we'll have the pleasure of hearing our final presenter, Andy. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And please state your name clearly.
My name is Andy Mattern, and I live on Road E. And from my house, I can see the vineyard and the hoop houses that have been erected. We watched it happen, and we had no idea what they were doing and what happened. And it finally revealed itself. In Redwood Valley, there's been several occasions where we feel like our voices haven't been heard. Decisions have been made by the county, etc., that have not talked to us. They have not given us that. Something that you may or may not know about Redwood Valley, we may not be incorporated, but we are connected. We are all connected. My mother was born in Lake Mendocino and lived there for very much of her life before it was a lake. We have lots of history here. I've been in Redwood Valley for 30 years. I came here because I wanted to live this way. I wanted to see my kids grow up in this way. And it's been a good way for my family. One of the fears that I have is that there are people who may not feel that connection, that culture that we have in Redwood Valley. It's a very special thing. Anybody who knows, connects up with the Grange or anything of that nature understands we're all here. And when the fires occurred, I love the saying, we may not have it together, but together we have it all. That's our home. That's where we want to be. And we are concerned that this commercial endeavor has no connection with any of the things that we cherish and that we love. It's part of our lives. I don't know how you would feel about it if it happened to you, but it's happening to us. We're asking that you hear our voices. As was said before, we pay taxes. We obey the law. We don't do things outside of that. I'm understanding that these houses were permitted, but the growing was not. And I'm understanding that possibly some crops have come through already. This only tells me that whatever conditions may be presented against these folks in the future won't be respected either. How many hothouses is enough? How many do they really want to put up? There's 14 now. And there's a lot of resistance to that. But when the resistance leaves, when people decide this is okay, what's it going to look like? What's going to happen to us? There's a lot of us out here. We have a voice, and we're trying to speak that. The big thing for us is connection. I'm connected to all these people. I love these people. These are who I want to live with. They're respectable people. They ask permission. I had a neighbor, he wanted to dig a very deep well because he needed more water for his vineyard. He came to me and he said, "What do you think of that?" And I said, "Pete, I think I'm okay, but I don't know about the Kinneys. They got a shallow well. I'm not sure if that's going to work for them." He went and he asked people because he cared. That's the difference. He was not going to do a hit and run. He has the ability to drill a well and put a pump on it. That's what he does for a living. But he didn't do it. He didn't do it because he was a good neighbor. He respected all of us and respected what we were dealing with as well. This has been a good rain year. Oftentimes we don't have them. And sometimes we have to ration our water. We all do that voluntarily so that everybody can drink and everybody can have the water they need. So I don't know how to say all this, but what I wanted to say is, please listen to us. Please listen to us. We have we have a community that we love, we invest in, and we work toward making a better place for everybody. And we consider everybody when we make those decisions. You know, it's a wonderful community, and we would love to have it continue to be what it is. And it's not that I'm against marijuana. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm against commercial, full season, four crops a year, commercial grows from people that may not even live here and have no respect for what we have. It just presents them a good business opportunity, and because they have the money, they can do that. We don't have the money. We can't just go buy that land up and say, we're going to leave it this way or leave it that way. We don't. But you have the ability to help us, and we're asking you to help us. Please do that. Thank you.
Is there anybody else for the applicant?
I just forgot my folder.
So seeing that there's no more presentation from the applicant, I'm going to bring it back to the commission and see if we have any questions for the applicant's presentation. And Commissioner Jones.
I do not have any questions yet.
Commissioner Pollan.
I have one question, and I apologize, I didn't catch the first presenter's name, but I had a question for you if you'd be willing. Yes, please. Would you be willing to come back to the microphone so that your answer can be heard by all? Thank you.
Could you restate your name?
Kathleen Gilly.
Thank you, Ms. Gillian. You had stated at one point in your presentation that you never intended for this prohibition district to include legal grows. Did you say that, or did I mishear you when you said that?
No, I must have not read it properly. No, I didn't say that.
Okay. Well, if that was not your statement, then my follow-up question is not applicable, so thank you.
Okay.
I don't have any questions for the applicant at this time. I may, as we get farther into the hearing, so I will then move to public comment. It's a good thing. Okay, so to public comments, and so and what I'm going to ask is that we're going to time you, whether you're one of these inhuman speakers, to 2 minutes, and also anybody we pick up later on Zoom. And so I'm going to call out by name, and please come to the microphone, and you have 2 minutes to speak. Please introduce yourself with your name. And Christine Boyd, first speaker.
Good morning. I'm Christine Boyd. I live off of Road E in Redwood Valley. And good morning, commissioners and stakeholders and neighbors. Thank you for the and staff. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Excuse me just one moment. Russ, can we have the map up? That's the map that shows the aerial imagery. So because it states the roads.
Sure, yeah, stand by.
Thank you, on the screens. And excuse me for interrupting you. And
no problem. Can I start my 2 minutes? I thought I had 3, so I might have to talk kind of fast. As I said in my letter that my husband and I wrote to the commission, we voted on behalf of legalization of cannabis in California, and we still stand by that vote. We think it's a good idea. But perhaps we were a bit naive when we thought that crime would be reduced, but Sheriff Matt Kendall comes to our monthly Municipal Advisory Council meetings in Redwood Valley, and he assures us that crime has not significantly decreased. They're still way in over their heads on all kinds of crime in our community, as we know. Because with cannabis, whether it's legal or illegal, I mean, we don't know. And that's probably true for most people. If cannabis is growing, it is an attractive nuisance. And for proof of this, we know that even on legal grows, you're going to see things like security, cameras, alarms, dogs, weapons are even on those properties oftentimes. And in addition, the wrong element is attracted to grows, whether they're legal or illegal. Nobody posts a sign saying, I'm legal, they're not. That doesn't happen. So people who know marijuana is growing also know that besides the product, there may also be cash. It's usually a cash business, and even weapons. So this attracts the wrong kind of people, whether a grow is legal or illegal. A recent article talked about the growers in our community. I've just seen some of them today. I didn't know who they were, but I would like to point out one thing. It's very important that came out in a recent article and came out in a comment by the attorneys, and that is that because these growers who are in our community right now who would be in this zone are Latinx, that this is a racist attempt. Nothing could be further from the truth. As I say, I didn't know who the people were. I and many of my community members and neighbors strongly support anti-racism in every way, financially and otherwise. So let's not take our eye off the ball. This is about cannabis growth, it's about security, it's about traffic, and all the bases that were mentioned earlier, which I really appreciate hearing about. Thank you very much, and thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. The next speaker, Cindy Barra Waskow.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Cindy Barra Waskow. The Barra family has been farming wine grapes in Redwood Valley, Mendocino County for over 100 years. We have turned the soil and tended the vines of many local vineyards. We have worked and played in these vineyards for 5 generations. It was the hard work, passion, and commitment of many family generations that had helped build this valley to the wonderful community it is today. While we understand that not all farmers are the same, no matter what the crop is, we are alarmed by the new direction our valley is going with the influx of cannabis farming. Our concern as Redwood Valley natives is the cannabis industry will not commit to our community the way so many others have. It is our concern the cannabis industry will take from our community more than it gives. It is our concern the cannabis industry may not step up in our community. Will they be our volunteer firefighters? Will they be our friendly neighbors? Will they participate in the Black Bark Days parade? Will they protect each other's properties from impending fire? Will they take time out of their day to pick up trash along our roadways? Or will they bring rising crime rates to our quiet little valley with the threat of home invasion and increased theft? Will they bring greater environmental demise, worsening our strained water supply and diluting our starry night skies? We understand cannabis is a legal agricultural crop. However, it does invite an illegal element that causes concern for the safety and serenity of our beloved valley. We ask for your dedication to this important issue using a community-minded approach over a financial one. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you. Next speaker, Arthur J. Munoz.
Yeah, my name is Arthur J. Munoz, and I'm asked to read this for the Redwood Valley East Side Residential Committee project. Dated May 16th, 2023. Dear Planning Commissioners, this is in response to a statement by Ms. Lerma, hopefully I'm saying that right, in a second letter she submitted dated March 22, 2022. Ms. Lerma mentions costs expended by her clients of approximately $223,113. We respond, without seeing documentation, we must take Ms. Lerma's at her word, but the question whether any of these costs include fines for violations. It is also mentioned Road D site drilled a wells, so we question if the cost of drilling is also included in the above amount. Ms. Lerman further states it is unfair to lead a person into such expenditures and then take the benefits therefrom away from that person. We respond, the attorney's clients should have known the cost of conducting this business and obviously had the money to purchase a large agricultural piece of property. Under this ordinance, they may still be allowed to conduct this business for an additional 3 years if they are fully and legally permitted. It is estimated that cannabis growers are able to produce 3 to 4 crops per growing season in hoop houses. There is much talk that pot prices are down to the point where it is no longer profitable to grow. We believe this is mainly true for the smaller, long-time Mendocino County growers who are being affected and pushed out by these new mega growers. Regarding water usage, Mr. Lerma states 1750/1900 Road D had permitted wells drilled, have Redwood Valley Ag Water have had to purchase water in the past, so clearly their well isn't taking water from other properties. We respond, if they had to purchase water and truck it in, and if they had to drill a well, it sounds like there was not sufficient water on the property for this type of business to begin with. This leads to a greater question of how much water is being drawn from their newly drilled well from the aquifer that is close proximity to residences which depend on well water only.
Thank you. You have your 2 minutes. Thank
All
you
right,
very
thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker, Judy Maddox.
Good morning. My name is Judy Maddox. I don't think I'm the most articulate person here, but these are a few of my thoughts. We've been in our home in Redwood Valley for 37 years, and we found it a very pleasant place to live near the vineyard. But when the hoop houses went up in the middle of the vineyard, it suddenly became very odd to feel unsafe in our little community. Every day we read about the increased risk of criminal activity being associated with large marijuana grows. At the same time, there was noticeable additional traffic on our little road. Instead of caring neighbors who would watch out for my 95-year-old mom when she was out walking and the neighborhood kids on their bikes, there were trucks headed to the grow driving way too fast down our road. Also, a real concern is the odor. During 2 beautiful months when I would usually have had my windows wide open, I had to keep my house closed up and pay the air conditioning bill because the stench just nauseated me. As landowners, we appreciate the privilege of using our property as we see fit, but I feel we need to consider the effect that we have on our neighbors as we make those choices. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, Leigh Simons Davis, and correct me if I mispronounced your name.
Good morning. Yes, it's Leah Simmons Davis. I'm here to share my support, my concerns and support of the CP petition our neighborhood has submitted. This petition doesn't necessarily mean we are against cannabis. It means we don't want our neighborhood overrun by large commercial grows and don't want our wells to run dry. There's already an illegal grow site with 14 hoop houses in the middle of a vineyard in our neighborhood that got raided by law enforcement last summer. This landowner has already clearly demonstrated disregard for Mendocino County laws. I ask, will he report correct revenue generated and pay taxes in the future? Will he not use poison around his grow? Will he abide by water use regulations? Let his past actions speak for themselves. We want the planning department and supervisors to do the right thing and not grant any legal growing permits while we are in our process. In general, the supervisors should listen to what citizens are saying in regards to legal cannabis in Mendocino County. The county has done a lackluster job so far with permitting and enforcement. As someone who works in emergency services, I'm a fire captain. I've been working for CAL FIRE for 20 years. I've seen firsthand the shootings that occur at grows, the burning of garbage, the stealing of water from streams, growers that patrol their property with large guns, and people moving into the area just to grow without the intention of being a positive part of the community. This is not what we want in our neighborhood. After the last attempted meeting in here on April 20th, we all walked out of the supervisor's chambers frustrated and wondering if there's intentional stalling going on. We wish to go on record stating that we request no new applications or permits be accepted, granted, or approved to grow commercial cannabis in our proposed district while we are in the application process for a cannabis prohibition combining district and before a hearing and decisions are made by Planning and the Board of Supervisors. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. The next speaker, Harold Bainbridge.
My name is Harold Bainbridge, and I live on Road I, and I've been in Redwood Valley for 50 years, and I've watched this experiment that we've had with cannabis. And I remember the failings of that experiment, the home invasions on the perimeter of this boundary that we have now, that the mistaken people that are the victims of crime because of where they live. We all have a big investment, and to have somebody come in and make a new investment that was a speculative investment. They knew what they were doing. They knew what they were buying. They knew that they were growing before they have a permit. They have an application is what they have. They have a disregard for the legal use of the land. And they have a culture that has a disregard for the law. We have people that are concerned to even show up here, to put their name on this list. This boundary would be bigger, but there are people that are intimidated to do that. So the experiment is ongoing, and I'm not against cannabis. But we have to look at the history we have. You know, they were growing weed when I was in high school. This is nothing new. But this plant, what we're doing right here, what we're considering, we've played by the rules. We're asking to be opt out. Sounds like we've met all the requirements. And the concern now is about a few growers that speculated to grow inside that area, or that were allowed to consider to be growing in this area, being relocated.
Thank you, your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I appreciate all the speakers who are trying to hold tight to their timeline, and because we're going to have a long meeting. The next speaker, Jean-Luc Lusach. I don't have the name right. I'm probably burying it, and correct me when you come up.
Good morning, Commissioners. Jean-Luc Shaw, loud enough. Jean-Luc Shaw, consultant with Emerald Law Group. I'd like to start off by saying that I actually understand the concerns and fears that people in a neighborhood would have about change to their neighborhood. But I would like to point out that what is happening with these three grows that are within the zone, the proposed zone, are within the bounds of 10A17. Just for clarification, the two on Road D have application receipts. They are therefore legal to cultivate at this point under Phase 1. The one on Road E is in an application phase under Phase 3, which does not allow at this point cultivation. So that's just for clarification. It's also worth noting a lot of the concerns I feel are a bit of misunderstanding, a bit of fear, which could have been addressed directly with the clients. And I understand it's difficult to do that when it's a fear-based situation. However, I heard a comment about the pond at 1900. I will tell you that I was out there with CDFW, which is a very difficult and very rigorous federal, or rather California state organization that ensures the quality of state waters. So there is an LSA, which is a Lake and Streambed Alteration Agreement, on file for the protection of that pond and the protection of the creek to the north. So if you've ever had to do an LSA, you'll understand just what is involved. There is so much oversight. There's an awful lot of oversight for the water that's there. We do water reports every year. There are inspections. As far as the crime, oh, I'm sorry, I'm going over my time. So I'll thank you very much for the time.
All right, Lois, go forth.
Good morning. My name is Lois Goforth. My husband and I live on Humphrey Lane. We're immediately adjacent to the Road H, Road E proposed site. Our fence line runs directly along their road. We've owned that parcel for 43 years. We've lived next door to the vineyard, the operating vineyard, in all that time and never had any issues. While the vineyard designated ag land use is surrounded by residences where families live, raise animals, have vegetable gardens and fruit orchards, there's a place for commercial cannabis grows, but I do not believe it's in the middle of a vineyard that's surrounded by small acreage residences. Proponents of commercial cannabis recently stated that if this cannabis prohibition zone is approved, it will put all cannabis cultivation at risk and do nothing to control the unregulated cannabis grows. The purpose of this requested prohibition zone is not to eliminate cannabis cultivation, but to allow longtime residents to retain their current quality of life. It's been said that cannabis is a new crop, that there was the same opposition to grapes. I would dispute that, as grapes never brought any home invasions. Cannabis proponents say they want to be good neighbors. In 43 years, we've had good neighbors, but they never brought in 17 cars of various law enforcement and a helicopter flying low over our building in order to land on the neighbor's site and remove 1,600 illegally grown plants. Why should the person who has illegally grown and brought this disruption to our neighborhood be rewarded with a permit while we, the law-abiding taxpayers, continue to pay our taxpayers? It's also been stated that if the prohibition site will lower property values, it will not. We will not be able to find the buyers for our site, and I'm out of time. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next is Callie Perkins.
Just to clarify, I have two other people who are giving me their time. That would be Ruben Ruiz and Julissa Gonzalez. I can provide you with
Ruben Ruiz, okay.
I would just...
So you're going to stack your timing for 6 minutes?
Yes.
All right.
And I would just note it would have been a lot more fair to allow the people most affected by this to present. We had asked for the ability to do a presentation, and we were denied that. But they are the people affected, and I want to take the time to introduce them. So Ruben Ruiz is here. He's the permit holder at 1750 and 1900 Road D. And Enarbo Lopez, he's the owner at 2270 Road E. He previously had a lessee in place who was not operating correctly. That person's since been kicked out. He's taking over, and he is doing things correctly. And as people have heard, he submitted a Phase 3 application. Enarbo was born and raised in Mendocino County. He's lived his entire life in Mendocino County. He's contributed substantially to the local economy. He owns multiple businesses, among the cannabis business. Ruben Ruiz is a family man. He would never do anything to put himself or his family at risk. Since the time he's learned of these complaints, he has undertaken steps that he's not even required to do by the regulations in order to appease his neighbors. Had he heard about these complaints sooner, he would have taken them a long time ago. Both of them are very approachable, and they want to hear these concerns from their neighbors, and they want to do their best to address them. As far as the costs, the almost $250,000 that was spent on county and state application fees, renewal permit license fees, Mendocino cannabis taxes, permitting hoop houses, annual water board enrollment fees, costs of preparation of site management plans, costs for the LSAs with CDFW that Jean-Luc mentioned, the LSA filing fees, and costs of corporate documents. They don't include attorney and consultant fees, and they certainly don't include fines. This is an expensive and long process. The Road D permits were turned in 2018, and that shows how the Mendocino Cannabis Department is doing. They still have not processed his permit. He is growing lawfully with an application receipt, so it's through no fault of his own that he doesn't have an actual annual permit. The main complaints focus on water usage, pesticide usage, odor, dogs, driving, and view, and I want to address those. As for water usage, water is highly regulated when it comes to cannabis. CDFW, the Regional Water Quality Control Board, and the State Water Resources Control Board all weigh in on water usage. Cultivators have to apply to all these entities in order to obtain a cultivation permit or license, and their water usage is closely monitored. They have to file annual usage reports, and these are all available to people to see. These cultivators have Redwood Valley Ag Water. They also have permitted wells, and they're willing to purchase additional water if necessary, and they've had to do that in the past on a limited basis, just when other people did in Redwood Valley. So it's untrue that their wells are draining other people's wells. These parcels also have ponds, but they're used strictly for the working vineyards that are in operation. As far as I heard some complaints about there being cannabis grows on vineyards, and that is where CDFW, the entity charged with maintaining the environmental integrity of grows, that's where they want them put, on already disturbed ag land. As for pesticide usage, it's more regulated when it comes to cannabis than with vineyards. Both of these permit holders operate organic vineyards and organic cannabis grows. And Arbel's not growing at present, but his will be organic. It is extremely hard to pass cannabis testing. If there's any pesticides found on cannabis, the whole crop cannot be sold. As for odor, at 1750 and 1900, the permit holders have taken upon themselves to plant lavender and odoriferous plants around the entire perimeter of the grows. They're also growing strains that are far less skunky this year in order to reduce the odor. And as for 2270, there is no cultivation there, but they're happy to take those same measures. I would note the nearest residence is 2,000 feet away, and the cultivation is surrounded on all sides by vineyards. As for complaints of dogs, there's no dogs at 2270 Road E. There's only one dog at 1750 and 1900. The permit holder is more than happy to ensure that that dog is on leash if he is outside the boundaries of the parcel. He's a very friendly dog. Many of the neighbors know him from their daily walks when he treats them. As for driving, there are not a large amount of workers at these sites. For 2270 Road E, there's only vineyard workers coming and going. Same with 1750, 1900. The permittee himself drives very cautiously and respectfully on the roads, and it's only the vineyard workers. They use labor farm contract vineyard workers that are the same vineyard workers that work at many areas in Redwood Valley. Those are the people that are coming and going as far as traffic, not anyone to do with the cannabis. So our clients are not the source of people driving disrespectfully on the roads. There was a complaint about dust. Our clients took it upon themselves to get 5-mile-per-hour signs for the dirt road that leads between 1750 and 1900 in order to keep dust down. As for the view, at 1750 and 1900, they've installed an additional 2+ feet of lattice fencing to the top of their fences in order to obstruct the view. And they have blackout covers on all hoop houses to prevent light leaks. They've also done additional winterization to ensure the wind cannot blow off the tarps and allow for light leaks. And at 2270 Road E, Ann Arbor has gotten permits for 8-foot tall fences in order to block the view, and the cultivation's not visible from the road. I want to point out that I don't believe a cannabis prohibition zone is the proper remedy for these complaints. As people state, they pay property taxes, they pay taxes. Code enforcement should be enforcing complaints. If there are valid violations of regulations, that is code enforcement or law enforcement's job to enforce these complaints. It's not fair to all the property owners here to impinge their property rights in order to remedy these complaints. Our clients also want to be good neighbors. They want you to come and approach them and tell them of your issues, and they are happy to address them with you. Your land is far more desirable if it has less limitations on potential uses. There's far more parcels in Mendocino County that disallow cultivation than those that prohibit it. And also this cannabis prohibition zone doesn't prevent illegal farms from coming in.
Your time is
Okay,
up.
nor pig farms, which would be far, far worse of a
All right.
nuisance.
Thank you. Next speaker, Jim Owen.
Good morning. My name is Jim Owen. I've been a resident of the Redwood Valley Benchland since 1973. I wish to read a letter right now from a neighbor, concerned neighbor, Alan Thompson. It says, "My name is Alan Thompson, and I currently own property located on the proposed opt-out zone. Redwood Valley Water District currently does not have any water rights. The last 2 years, RVWD has not been able to supply ag water to their customers. The water was finally turned on in September 22. RVWD has told their customers there is no guarantee that they will be able to supply ag water without further interruptions in the ag services. The reason I mention this is RVWD is not a viable water source for commercial cannabis operation. Wells. The area in Redwood Valley is not known for high-volume wells / ag wells. Knowing water is an issue in this area, I paid Western groundwater surveyors to explore the possibility of drilling a well on my property. This company does seismoelectric surveys, also known as ESIs. The results from that study on my property was an estimated 5 to 10 gallons per minute, and I would have to drill 300 feet to get that amount. They also checked public records and found that this area where 4 dry holes were drilled, 1 2-gallon minute well, 1 4-gallon per minute well, 1 6-gallon per minute well, and 2 10-gallon per minute wells. When wells are first drilled, the GPM is always test higher than what they actually produce. Best method is to take the GPM when it's drilled and cut it in half, and that is what you end up getting. Property values. It's a known fact that residential values go down in value when commercial cannabis is grown in the surrounding neighborhoods. When people purchased their home in Redwood Valley, they were looking for country living, the peace and quiet that it provides for raising a family, farm animals, and to do 4-H with their kids. Part of purchasing a home is for their real estate agent to give the buyer a full disclosure package about the property and surrounding neighbors. If a vineyard was nearby, part of this disclosure package would make the buyer aware of the nuisance of living next to a vineyard. That disclosure would let the potential buyer know that certain times of the year there would be tractor noise and spraying. These homeowners were not given any disclosures about commercial cannabis cultivation, and the nuisance that contributed to cannabis. These homeowners may not have purchased if they knew Mendocino County was going to allow commercial cannabis in their rural neighborhoods.
Okay, thank you. Your time's up. Thank you very much. Our next speaker, Gary Maddox.
Good morning. My name is Gary Maddox, 35-year resident of Redwood Valley, and I'm reading this on behalf of Melanie and Granville and Melanie Poole. There are several huge commercial cannabis grow operations close to us already, something we did not anticipate when we approved cannabis legalization. Yes, we both voted to approve legalizing pot use and cultivation. We certainly did not, however, in any way mean to approve, nor did we realize we might be approving the sort of large commercial operations that have sprung up in our neighborhood. Wine grapevines have been torn out and replaced with giant commercial plastic-covered hoop houses. Not only do we consider the cheapo plastic monster hoop greenhouses a visual blight while in use, but are concerned as well that if and when these operations fail, these structures and their rotting plastic sheeting will be left to further blight the environment and eventually require significant public efforts and funding to mitigate. If a small heritage operation needs a single greenhouse of modest proportions to remain viable, we would expect the sort of respect for the environment and neighborhood to build, install substantial structures that honor neighborhood values. In our dreams, these would be classic glass and iron conservatories, not throwaway junk structures, reflections of enterprise commitment and aesthetic sensitivity. We are not convinced that a majority of voters approving pot legalization had this massive blight in mind and question whether it is even legal under state law. This was, as I stated, from Granville and Melanie Poole, residents on 2601 Road I in Redwood Valley. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker, I think it's Franny's, but it could be Francis Owen.
I'm back because I love to speak, public speak so much. I just wanted to read a quick letter that my husband and I wrote in response to our opposition, the attorneys.
Could you lower the microphone just a little bit?
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, so we wish to respond to a few statements made by Ms. Lerman, Esquire, Emerald Law Group, in her letter dated March 22nd, 2022. Ms. Lerman states, the applicants concede that properties within the RR1 zone are not qualified to commercially cultivate cannabis. Therefore, none of the RR1 properties will be affected by the establishment of a CP combining district. Our response is, we concede no such thing and will address the point at the hearing, which we have been addressing, I believe. However, please remember that this is an opt-out application, which was inserted into the ordinance by the Board of Supervisors to protect residents who might be in proximity to commercial cannabis operations, and it is those who live there whom the ordinance conferred an option to prevent commercial operations. Also, the objector's reference to a 55.8% is a manipulation of the data and runs contrary to the purpose of the opt-out provisions. Based on our submitted signed petitions in favor of the CP rezoning, we will defer to the Planning Department for their determination of legality, allowances, disallowances, and calculations. Ms. Lerman also states, this application reeks of fear and racism. Our response, this application is not racially motivated, plain and simple. We find these accusations to be highly offensive and perhaps a ploy to distract from the real discussion we need to be having here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker, Michael Katz.
Good morning, Planning Commission, county staff, and stakeholders. My name is Michael Katz, the Executive Director for the Mendocino Cannabis Alliance. I want to start off by just mentioning some facts that are baseline true, one of which is that there are no cannabis cultivation sizes in Mendocino County over 10,000 square feet. The largest concerns I'm hearing from the proponents of this are concerns about large corporate grows and concerns about unregulated cannabis. And as we all know, a prohibition zone will do nothing to stop unregulated cannabis. And also, there is currently no pathway in Mendocino County available for any grow larger than 10,000 square feet, as you all know from our past conversations related to the previous cannabis ordinance. So that is not coming. They would require a new ordinance, an EIR, lots of money, lots of time, which the county does not have. And so the fears of large corporate grows infiltrating this community are completely unfounded. So if that's one of the major concerns, then that being a concern and that can't happen, then that would be a reason not to approve the district. The other thing is that it's a misnomer to try to identify these operators who are in the program as not having a permit. While they may not have a county annual permit, they have been issued local authorization to operate. They have their state provisional licenses. Maybe 5% of all cannabis operators in Mendocino County right now have annual licenses and annual permits. So it's a failing of the entire program that's being worked on right now. But to say that they are not legal and they don't have the ability to do what they're doing, it's incorrect. So the only people that will be negatively impacted by this are not all of the unregulated cultivators, but it will be these folks who have been doing their best to try and stay regulated. And so I urge you to not adopt this prohibition district. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, Andy Master. Maybe I didn't say it right. Andy Mastera? Not here. Andy Mattern? Okay, sorry.
Hello, my name is Andy, and I've been asked to read a piece of paper here. There are neighbors participating in the cannabis opt-out zoning request who have lived adjacent to the proposed commercial cannabis site for 40-plus years. Those owners and adjacent neighbors who have lived peacefully alongside the vineyard and relative activities for the years or decades now find a rural, peaceful life threatened. Allowing a commercial cannabis site within this rural setting will drastically change the area and the rural atmosphere. It is true the land in question is zoned agricultural, but a commercial cannabis grow cannot be compared to a vineyard. The current established and thriving vineyard utilizes the pond and ag water a few times per year for frost protection and irrigation prior to harvest, while cannabis requires daily irrigation. The vineyard produces one crop per year, whereas there can be multiple cannabis grows resulting in year-round irrigation. Proponents of the proposed commercial cannabis site have been told adjacent landowners their property values will decrease if the opt-out zoning is approved, when in fact the opposite is true. Property values go down in value when commercial cannabis is grown in the adjacent area. This translates into many owners seeing their homes and property devalued and see fewer prospective buyers. Should so many owners lose the value in their property to accommodate the commercial cannabis grower? Consideration should be given to the owners who have owned in this rural community for decades, raising families and contributing to the community, paying property taxes to Mendocino County. Road H and E parcels were purchased in an established, thriving vineyard. The current owner removed vines to put in a new road and 14 hoop houses, and then proceeded to grow illegally. If the opt-out is approved, the owner will still have the producing vineyard as a source of income. The Mendocino Cannabis Alliance stated that the cannabis business has contributed millions of dollars to the general fund, whereas we have read in the Daily Journal that tax revenue from cannabis grown in Mendocino County has fallen far below what was expected. This would indicate that commercial cannabis is not the revenue-producing business it has been purported to be. Javier Rao stated the ordinance 10A.717 encourages cannabis farms to be cultivated on parcels zoned ag and particularly on valley floors. It would appear the intent with commercial cannabis farming is to replace small residential parcels, vineyards, and small cannabis being grown for personal use with acres of hoop houses as seen in Covelo. Mr. Rao further suggests that traffic and water concerns stated in the opt-out applications may be caused by unregulated farms in the area, not by any current proposed commercial cannabis grows within the delineated district. This appears to be an attempted distraction.
Thank you. You
exceeded
your time. Our next speaker, Kathleen Jay-Z. Okay. All right, thank you. Cynthia Grant.
Good morning, thank you. My name is Cynthia Grant, and I live and work in Redwood Valley in the area that is requesting the cannabis-free zone. I am very much in favor of it, and as a licensed real estate appraiser, I want to point out that the areas in this county that already have a cannabis-free zone, like Deerwood and El Dorado, are among the highest priced properties in this county. So the inaccurate statement going around that the cannabis-free zone will lower our property values is very easily disproved. For more than 20 years, I have valued real estate in Mendocino County. There are many areas in this county that are very rural and zoned more appropriately for the large cannabis grow. To allow the cannabis to grow in the areas that are zoned residential and have small 1 to 5 acre sites doesn't make much sense. As you would imagine, and for the many reasons that have already been pointed out, such as criminal activity, homeowners looking to buy residential property would not choose to be in close proximity to a cannabis grow. I also wanted to note that small business owners who pay revenue would be forced to relocate. This would be true for many small businesses in the Redwood Valley area, as well as large ranches and vineyards that would be affected by the problems that cannabis brings. My husband and I both own and operate small business in Redwood Valley, as do many of the petitioners in the opt-out. I have heard it said that small businesses such as ours are the backbone of America. We'll be forced to leave the area, taking our revenue with us, leaving the area to be inhabited by the cannabis growers who only pay tax on a very small portion of their product, as most of their product is sold on the black market. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker, Sally Tolini Salina.
I'll be reading 2 letters, my own and then another. My name is Selena Tolini. I am a Hispanic vineyard owner. My husband and I have owned vineyards in a beautiful area in Redwood Valley. We have both grown up here in our valley. My husband's family is part of the original Finnish colony, rich with historical farmland, right here in our valley. With the large cannabis grows going into our quiet neighborhoods, our beautiful valley is now affecting our way of living. Having to look at 14 hoop houses, which once were vineyards with views, we now have more traffic, more noise, more strangers. Our views are blocked by these huge plastic fields, and now we deal with the strong stench in the air. This is not how we care to live. We farmed our grapes for 40 plus years. We've paid taxes. We've hired Hispanic local workers. We have paid our required workman's comp insurance. We've paid payroll taxes, liability insurance, all to make an honest living. We've been dealing with smoke from the surrounding fires in the past 3 years, affecting our crops, and the wineries rejecting our fruits due to smoke taint. This year, the wineries have added an addendum to our contracts regarding cannabis taint if it is near our contracted vineyards. They will not buy our fruit in the future. This is a huge concern for us. We were here first. Farming vineyards is our industry. We do not see it working together. We are the people who will suffer. We still live here.
You have 11 seconds left.
I'm going to read a letter from my next group.
Okay. Go ahead.
I'm writing this letter to accompany our signature on a petition establishing a CP district in our neighborhood. I simply want to detail the changes in our daily life that we have experienced over the last few years since having this huge grow. 14 hoop houses is quite large. It borders the back of our 1 acre property. We've lived here for 16 years and used to enjoy the quiet country setting in which we chose to purchase our home. This is no longer a quiet country neighborhood because of the loud trucks, the equipment constantly going up and down our tiny road. This road can barely handle the cars, let alone 18-wheelers, heavy equipment, and water trucks. The road is severely breaking down to the point it is just a bunch of repaired potholes. I used to enjoy walking daily, but fear of doing so anymore. The workers speed past with no thought to the pedestrians. Also, the dogs that run loose are scary and dangerous. No longer can we enjoy opening our windows on a cool summer evening or morning due to the skunkish smell that is caused by the grow. I had hopes of hosting my daughter's wedding in our backyard, but that is no longer possible due to the ugly fencing, the hoop houses, and the smell. Because our property is adjacent to the grow, I fear that we will be mistaken for the owner and perhaps suffer at the hand of thieves. I no longer feel safe staying at home in my own home. This commercial grow has taken away so much from us, and I implore you to give very thorough and thoughtful consideration for approving our opt-out zone in our neighborhood. Terry and Rick Sands have since sold their property, and they've moved into Ukiah. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're going to take a 10-minute break, and we will return at 4 minutes before 11, and we'll continue.
Personally, I think everybody could benefit from the home visiting programs.
I think that as a parent now, I'm grateful for support more than I was before.
I filled out that form not knowing what I was doing. I am very, very grateful that I did it because it's really helping me a lot.
Bueno, creo que por mi parte esperaba algo totalmente diferente, como un programa más frío, por decir algo, no tan cercano a la familia. Y a través del programa nos hemos dado cuenta que también pasa a ser una familia con nosotros porque nos apoya en los momentos difíciles o cuando nos hemos visto en dificultades.
Well, I was a new mom and I had no experience taking care of a newborn.
There isn't like a book on how to raise a kid.
We come from like a lot of family history of, drugs, violence, alcoholism, so we didn't want our daughter to experience any of that.
The thought that a parent was supposed to be loving, nurturing, supposed to be there for their kid, provide food, shelter, joy, and going in, becoming a parent for her, I had no clue how to provide that.
Cómo pensar educarla, cómo educar a un hijo porque pues nosotros nunca, es la primera vez que íbamos a ser padres.
What I think parents should know about home visiting is that you can learn a lot of new things and tips and tricks, how to take care of the baby and what to do, and if you're, stuck in a routine and everything being monotonous, like they give you new resources and new tools how to handle parenthood.
It was nice to have them kind of guiding me. Even though I was not a first-time mom, I felt like a first-time mom.
It totally blew my mind over time. So much information that I had no idea about. She was straightforward when, teaching me this stuff and answered any of my questions. Just a really positive experience.
What I think that parents could benefit with the program is just having someone here for you, especially for first-time parents. It can be very isolating and it can be very lonely, and having the home visitor changes that and it feels very good.
For me, having a home visitor is like having a second mom there.
A lot has changed. I'm definitely more knowledgeable taking care of her, and I know that anytime I need advice or help from somebody, I can just call her.
It's just that little positive nudge to, hey, I'm noticing something, let's find a way how to change it. And she's like, you know what, Amanda, let's pick you up, dust you off, and let's go over to, see about either getting your driver's license or seeing about, going to college, see if we can start something for you.
It's totally worth it. Like, even if you're on the fence at first, you don't feel like having a stranger coming in your house and teaching you about your little one, do it anyway. You get the help that you need. You get professional advice on things you may not know about your child. The fact that the program has no fees or anything, it's all totally free, is fantastic.
Yo creo que si conozco a alguien que está próxima a ser mamá, lo primero que haría sería recomendarle el programa, porque te entrega mucho apoyo, mucha información y más que nada como apoyo emocional, una guía, te da una visión diferente de cómo es ser papá aquí, quizás en este país.
Y así pues es algo, un bonito programa, porque pues es buena persona la señora y los ha atendido muy bien.
Pensé que nada más iba a ser un programa de orientación quizás para los nuevos padres, pero creo que nos llevamos una linda sorpresa porque Gaby es una persona muy cercana a nosotros, es como parte de nuestra familia, siempre ha estado dispuesta a ayudarnos y a escucharnos con nuestras dudas sobre la paternidad, y en nuestro caso, que estamos solos en este país, ha sido como de mucha ayuda.
Es un gran apoyo para nuevos padres, y más aún si están en nuestra situación, que somos extranjeros, que nuestra familia y amigos, como dice Carla, están en otro país, lejos. Entonces sí, viene muy bien el programa para apoyarse tanto emocional y como anímicamente, y bueno, en varios aspectos del programa que nos ayuda a seguir adelante con esta nueva aventura.
Te ayuda como a ver los distintos recursos que tiene la comunidad para nuevos papás, entonces creo que es de gran ayuda.
No queda mucho que agregar, pero lo veo de la misma forma.
Que hemos aprendido algunas cosas aquí y pues los han ayudado, como este programa los ha ayudado para seguir creciendo a la bebé, como con buenos consejos y así.
Sí, y creo que también ha sido muy importante el tema de apoyarnos con el libro y saber qué actividades hacer con Máximo de acuerdo a su edad, cómo estimularlo, cómo cuidarlo de los peligros de la casa, como cosas que uno como papá nuevo no conoce, claro.
Pues a mí me gustaría que lo siguiéramos visitando aquí en la biblioteca de Covelo. Está tranquilo y muy bonito aquí.
Cuando no nos podemos reunir, nos comunicamos por Zoom o una llamada telefónica o por texto.
Donde nos visite, porque ha sido nuestra casa, a veces nosotros vamos a Wellits y puede ser en el parque. Gaby llega, hacemos un resumen de cómo ha ido nuestra semana o qué hemos hecho de nuevo, cómo va el trabajo. Luego hacemos las actividades del libro. Vemos si podemos hacer un juguetito nuevo para Máximo, a veces ella lo evalúa, cómo está su sentido motriz, qué ha aprendido de nuevo, nuevas palabras, y jugamos un ratito y conversamos.
A mí personalmente también me ayudó mucho a obtener mi licencia a conducir, que era un objetivo que teníamos en cuanto a la familia,
sí,
para poder estar tranquilos, así que encuentro que ha sido fundamental el apoyo.
El objetivo del programa es que las familias estén bien, y que las familias estén bien significa niños felices, niños sanos, y eso en un futuro es adultos sanos y un mundo mejor. Entonces está bueno.
going to reopen the public hearing for the Planning Commission today, and I'm going to call Drea Braverman.
Hello, my name is Drea Braverman. I've lived in Redwood Valley for over 30 years. And my concern is there was no public hearing about this permitting process. We were not informed in any way of this before any of these permits were issued. Our property, one whole side of our property directly adjoins the 1750 property with the 14 hoop houses. And we're forced to put up with the stink of pot 24 hours a day. We can't escape it on our property. We don't have air conditioning. We don't have the filters. We have to have our windows open to cool our house at night. We're stuck with it. Our budget doesn't include going out to a motel to escape the skunky smell. So we're forced to live with it. I don't feel that a few lavender plants are going to correct the massive smell that's created. I can't invite friends over for a barbecue when the smell of pot is, overriding the smell of the dinner that we might prepare. It limits the use of our home, our property. We can't entertain. Plus, we have to smell this stuff. Our neighbors are concerned about, and we ourselves have a well, what's happening to the water table in our well. Pot uses a lot of water, and we have been in a water rationing situation. The ag water's been turned off. They're buying water, and I know that there's been a lot of discussion about the sale of water to residences, and where's that water coming from as well? It's not really fair to those of us that are rationing. The security concerns. We've got children on Land Lane, and young children, and I don't think it's it's a neighborhood nuisance as far as kids are concerned. It doesn't set a good example. But I have no problems with the cordiality of the folks, the workers there. I've had cordial relationships with them. But I have had to call for light at night. I've had to call for noises of people at night that don't sound normal to me. I've called for ATVs over there that don't sound normal to me. I've called, and I'm concerned for our safety,
Thank you. Your 2 minutes are up. Thank you very much. The next speaker, I believe I can't read the first name. Cezanne is the last name. Maybe you can make that root. Is it Richard? Yeah. Thank you, Richard.
Here to please. My name is Richard Sagan, and I'm an ex-CAL FIRE or CDF guy. I live off of Road H. And I'm here in favor of establishing the district, and a number of reasons why, but a lot of them have been already covered here. But the cannabis grows contribute very little financially to the local economy, to the schools, the county roads, the county services, your guys' jobs here. In regulating the cannabis industry in this county, there is a thought, at least conveyed to us, that there is a potential income stream to the county's operating budget, but that this hasn't been the case. There has been an estimates of 80% of the cannabis cultivation in this county is sold on the black market because they can't sell it. It's polluted, there's issues that it doesn't pass whatever threshold needs to be done, so what's being produced here is gone. So 20% the county may recognize if they claim that. So we're trying to survive on that 20% as taxable income. I'd like to point out that cannabis grow in the vicinity of residents and families with kids is a negative impact on the property owners that live there in the semi-rural, pleasant, clean environment. Environmental pollution happens all the time. With all the debris that they produce, where does it go? We don't necessarily see it in the landfills here because we don't have any, but I've seen in my career that it's just dispersed on the land, and then it pollutes after that. The adverse effect on the groundwater has been a major issue of the folks that have already been established here that they don't have enough water to live on. Criminal activity has already been addressed here, but there has been an increase in that. When they only pay 20% of their product as far as taxable income, impacts the maintenance of roads and the funding of schools and the maintenance of our county parks.
Thank you.
So I'm out of time.
Thank you very much.
Have a good day.
Thank you. Our next speaker, William Self. You're up.
I wasn't aware of the canvassing to support. What a wonderful effort, a big effort, and I could empathize with community concerns.
Would you just state your name, please?
Oh, my name's William Self. I'm on 9061 East Road near the ballpark. I moved to Redwood Valley close to 50 years ago, and I owned property for the last 40 years. I built 2 houses on. And I'm not confident this initiative will address your concerns. I mean, this is my take. I'm just going to be honest. I think the county used to have a lot of mom and pop income that you could see going through the hardware stores where you buy your building, do it yourself, build your house. And that stuff dead almost, like not dead, but it's way reduced, including for sales tax going into the city and county coffers. Property values out in the boondocks where little mom pops were making money, that's collapsed. I'm just kind of wondering, you know, like I've been tracking what's going on in the marijuana stuff because I've been curious. I've had some friends that have been.
Can you face
Mr.
the
Self,
mic?
can you use the microphone?
Okay, so does anybody have an idea that, like, Mendocino County's been so behind schedule in getting people online for a state permit that the state awarded $17.5 million to help people get legal to go through the state hoop. That blows my mind how far off Mendocino County's been compared to Humboldt County. But this is a statewide problem. Everybody chasing these guys around for tax money that isn't there. The market used to be $1,000 to $3,000 a pound. Is now like I can't sell it, or it's $100 to $300 a pound. I'm just I'm wondering about the 300. You know, this guy Javier.
Bill,
Rao,
William, your time's
Okay.
up.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay, I'm concerned about the unregulated hoop houses. Okay, that's and I'm looking for win-wins.
Okay, thank you. Our next speaker, E.D. Lerman.
Hi. My name was mispronounced a couple times, so now everyone knows. I'm Edie Lerman. I'm founder of Emerald Law Group, and I also represent several of the applicants. I asked Mr. Ford to put up this map because I think this map is really important. If you look at it, you can see the 2 applicants within the zone that are kind of right in front. Just below that, you can see to the left, there's another applicant right there. How is it possible that we are resolving the issues at hand here if we're going to allow an applicant to continue with their permit? Mind you, they are not Hispanic or Latino, but we're going to allow them to continue with their permit when the smell is going to be just as much of an issue. I don't think that cannabis grown by Latin or Hispanics smells any different from marijuana that's grown directly below them, but yet somehow we've gerrymandered this map so it doesn't include them. Additionally, if you look up onto the right, there's 3 applicants there just coincidentally outside of the zone. Granted, they are not minorities, but they are somehow also excluded because somehow their marijuana smells different, I guess. It just doesn't make sense. Or perhaps the statistics in terms of percentages don't work if you include those, which I think is more likely the case. We don't want to fight over this issue. It seems like these are incredibly nice folks that we wish very much to just get along with and be able to coexist. And I think we're really close to that. But prohibition is not the answer. And I believe there's two other folks that have conceded their time to me. But with respect to prohibition not being the answer, would you like their names?
You're rolling into another timeline. So why are you rolling into another timeline?
And they've submitted speaker slips. They've submitted speaker slips.
So Jose Gonzalez?
Yes.
And Ruben Ruiz? You use Ruben.
Right. Annabelle Lopez.
And so Annabelle Lopez is the one you're using?
Correct, those two.
So these two. Okay.
Yes.
Just so you have 4 minutes.
Okay. So there was a speaker that spoke about prohibition and their family having vineyards for generations here. And I think it's really important that we think back about why prohibition doesn't work, and at one time how there were prohibitions against these very vineyards that are now fighting for prohibition to exist nowadays. There's a great book called The Last Call that goes through prohibition in California and why prohibition existed at one time, what we've learned from it, and how we can expand. And here, these same individuals are essentially not okay with this agricultural crop because it's not a crop that they're familiar with. But all of these potential dangers that they talk about all existed when this country was going through prohibition change. And there was a drastic change between the people that were willing to pay their taxes, the people that wanted to have a lawful operation, and the people that were operating black market. There was also a conversion of people who were at one point operating black market or potentially had links to black market cultivations and had moved their cultivations. That's why we had phase 1 in this county, where we allowed previous cultivators to get licenses, and it was actually considered an advantage to have had a previous cultivation. These are folks that are trying to act within the law. And this map is very clear that the problems that we're trying to solve with stopping the smell of marijuana and stopping guns and stopping dogs, none of that is going to be solved by stopping these 2 or 3 farms from existing and providing to our local community. There's a lot of fear going on here, and I would just encourage everyone to try and set past their fear and take into consideration the advantages that actually come from having these lawful operations in our community. I'd be more than welcome to talk to anyone about these issues, and I think that prohibition, as far as a nation, as far as a state, and as far as locally, isn't going to work. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Lois Pittman.
Thank you. My name is Lois Pittman. I live on Colony Drive. I just want to encourage you to stop the cannabis in our area. I've lived here for just short of 20 years. I like to walk. I like to bicycle. I have personally been intentionally run off the road by a grower less than a quarter mile from my own home. So I don't feel safe. I guess that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker, Juan Gamiano.
Hello, my name's Juan Gamino. I'm the owner of the properties on 1900 and 1750 Road D. I farm vineyards in both Sonoma County and Mendocino County. I'm just very surprised how in 2023 in California, this type of racism still exists, and just some of the comments that have been made and been put in writing are being put out there, and these people don't realize that you know it's racist. In Sonoma County, I'm called Mr. Gamino in the vineyards. Here, we're called cartel. Some of these letters in writing, even the dog was called cartel. I didn't know there was cartel dogs. These people don't know my culture. We're a hardworking family. My daughter and kids go to Catholic schools. It's just, if this was the other way around and we were trying to sneak a prohibition zone without notification to prohibit vineyards for, you know, to produce wine and alcohol, and, you know, if it was the other way and we were calling them mafia because they were growing grapes, like in the 1920s, to produce alcohol, people would be outraged. I just wanted to put that out there, you know, and also there is a state licensed water truck delivery or hauling company on Road D, so the majority of the traffic is for that state licensed water hauling truck. Thank you.
Excuse me, I had one question. You mentioned what property did you farm?
So I own vineyards in Sonoma County, 2 in the Russian River AVA in Windsor, and the 2 on Road D. And we sell grapes, you know, both in Mendocino and Sonoma County, and we haven't seen any cannabis clause or.
So you're the owner of the 2 properties on D Road?
Yes, 1750 and 1900
All
Road
right.
D. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Michael Torres next. Okay, so I'm going to just read the names. Kelly, you have Michael Torres, you have Francisco Cardenas, you've given your time, and David Lopez Rodriguez. Okay?
Thank you.
You have 6 minutes.
I just want to commend Juan for coming up here. He has been a victim of racial profiling in Mendocino County previously. He was previously charged with 5 felonies for an alleged unlawful grow. It was next to his parcel where he had a lawful permit, and the only way that they connected him to this unlawful grow was the presence of cans of beans and salsa. That reeks of racism, just as this reeks of racism. As Edie mentioned, there are 7 grows directly surrounding the border of this zone. All the problems complained of are problems presumably on these 7 other grows, and they are not seeking to prevent those people from growing. They're only seeking to prevent the 2 minority permit holder and applicants that are within the zone. These are not black market grows, as the letters inferred, and a CP zone won't do anything to stop black market grows. Black market grows will continue within the CP zone. These grows do not have any guns on the premises. It should be known that guns are not allowed on a cannabis site. It is strictly prohibited. The only way a gun can exist near a cannabis grow is if there is a licensed security. And as Juan's letter points out, the only gun that was ever present on his grow was a hunter who used to be able to go to that pond on 1750 and 1900 to hunt. And the previous owners allowed hunting there, and so he saw a man walk up with a rifle and immediately was like, whoa, 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 we can't have guns here. I'm sorry, you know, we can't allow continue to allow hunting on this property. And contrary to a prior comment, these ponds are still thriving. There's wildlife in them. I was just there a couple weeks ago and saw turtles, ducks, fish. They are thriving ponds, and they are used only for the vineyards. These are not cartel members, as Juan mentioned. These are hardworking business owners. They're trying to provide their families in very hard economic times, and especially hard economic times in the cannabis industry. Mendocino Cannabis is failing. Our cannabis department has failed us, and it's not these people's fault. Many cannabis cultivators are leaving Mendocino County currently due to the permitting problems within the county. And the Board of Supervisors is looking to bypass Mendocino County permitting because of the problems with the reviews of the applications. Creating a CP zone provides additional incentive for cultivators to leave Mendocino County due to the unfriendly attitude this county has had towards them. It's much easier to get permits in other counties, and other counties allow for much larger cannabis cultivations. Just next door in Lake County, you can have a 2-acre grow. Here, we're capped at 10,000 square feet, so there's no possibility for these grows to expand. Further, in other counties, permit holders don't face the threat of having their hard work and all the money they've expended to obtain a permit taken away from them through an after-the-fact zoning modification, as is proposed here. We should be rewarding those that tough it out through the permitting process and that do their very best to do it right. They've expended incredible amounts of energy and resources to get here. We should not be punishing them for trying to do this the right way. I would also contradict the statements that cannabis uses more water than vineyards. Vines grow year-round. Cannabis does not if it's in an outdoor setting. They can get, at most, 3 harvests per year in an outdoor setting. Further, vineyards use an extreme amount of water for frost protection. They're running water all night long. Cannabis grows do not do that. Vineyards additionally use sulfur and spray sulfur, which leaves a horrible odor for days at a time. They're also much more of a nuisance insofar as they are harvested. They're harvested at night using loud tractors and very bright lights. That's an incredible nuisance for neighbors, but I don't hear that being complained of. As far as the other CP zones that were established, they were established at the time that permitting came into place. They were not after the fact. They did not cause any permit holder who's gone through this process to lose their permit. And as far as validating whether or not a grow is legal, that's available for everyone in this room to do. You can type in an address on the DCC website, and you can determine if that is a licensed grow and whether or not it's illegal. There were comments about not wanting new grows in the area. I would ask that if the Planning Commission does seek to create a prohibition zone, that they would at least allow those grows that exist to be grandfathered in through some mechanism. There's complaints about 10 grows in the area, but this is only affecting 3 grows. It's 2 already existing grows and 1 that's in the application process. And as far as black market sales, that also is prohibited. When you are a licensed and regulated cannabis cultivator, you have to enter every seed, clone, plant into metric. And that plant is tracked and traced throughout the entire cultivation cycle. And that is closely monitored by the DCC, and there are inspections by both the county and the state to ensure compliance with all the regulations throughout the cannabis cultivation cycle. Thank you.
Thank you. The next person is Cynthia, and it looks like Hoon.
Good morning, Board of Supervisors. My name is Cynthia Hune, and I'm a resident of Redwood Valley. I purchased my home back in 2000. Prior to that, I'd been coming to visit my folks who had relocated to Redwood Valley in 1991. I've seen many changes in our valley over the years, some good, some bad, but I've never experienced something that has changed my residential quality of life more than the commercial cannabis grows. I used to be able to sit on my front porch and look out at a vineyard, fields, and hills. Now, it's 11 white plastic hoop houses and a wooden fence. I used to be able to open my windows for fresh air and to cool my house or sit in my backyard. Now I get the almost constant odor of skunk from the cannabis when I do. Yes, I admit with grapes we get the seasonal odor of rotting fruit, but that's once a year during harvest, not a daily occurrence. The amount of traffic has increased significantly through the valley too. The weight of larger trucks and increased number of vehicles is further degrading our roadways. This too impacts those of us who enjoy walking, running, and cycling around our valley. Due to our current drought conditions and water scarcity, I worry that the increase in commercial cannabis growth will be detrimental to our limited sources of water. I am doing my part to conserve water and going without the niceties of having a garden and lush landscape. I do not see how we can justify allowing the expansion of or approving more cannabis grows in order to operate. I strongly encourage you to approve the cannabis prohibition zone in my neighborhood. And I do live off of East Road, and the vineyards that I used to look at are now covered by 11 white hoop houses. So if you'd like to see what your view happens from 2018 to 2023, that's what you get to look at. And it's not a racial thing, because that vineyard and cannabis growth on the other side of East Road is owned by a Hispanic gentleman who has been a legacy farmer. It impacts everybody's quality of life, and I feel for the rest of the folks. I would have known that was going in there. We would have been opposed to that as well, but it's already established, and so I feel their pain watching the 14 hoop houses going off of Road H.
Thank you very much. Your time's up. All right. I have no more papers of public speaking. Do we have any virtual?
If I may, Chair Wiedemann, I would just suggest to make one additional if folks did not complete a form for in-room before we move online.
Are there any other people out there wishing to speak who haven't filled a form, whether it was gold or pink? I think we have most of them.
Got it.
Okay. That said, are there any virtual members of our community wishing to speak?
We do not have any members of the public on Zoom.
All right.
Yes, there's no hands raised on Zoom right now. If individuals wishing to speak would raise their hands if that was what they intended to do. And I'm not seeing any hands go up. I just wanted to make sure they knew the right protocol. Thank you.
Are you asking if there was a comment card online? I don't.
To request to speak, all they need to do is raise their hand in the Zoom. They don't need to submit a comment card.
There's no Jolene on Zoom either.
All right. With that, I am now going to close the public hearing, and I'm going to ask staff if they have any final remarks.
Nothing else to add. Thank you.
And I'll ask the applicant for any final remarks. And now I'm going to bring it back to the commission. And I want to ask the commission if you have any questions for either staff or the applicants. Commissioner Jones.
I guess I only have one. I turned myself on to mute. If you could clarify what the boundaries were from the applicant versus what the boundaries became after staff recommended a change. I don't know that I have that totally clear in my head.
If I may, just to be clear, that county staff did not show them boundaries of how they should modify it. We just expressed concerns regarding the shape of the district as originally proposed, and I'll let Russ answer anything further.
Okay, thanks for the clarification. That's helpful.
The exhibit map that the applicants presented included the original proposal, with this black line here around kind of the south portion. All this portion on this kind of little islet here was excluded. Some of these parcels up here on the northwest corners were excluded also.
So the original map, they basically followed the rural residential zoning district boundaries on the southern part of the application. Is that correct?
Fairly close, it looks like, yes.
Thank you.
No, public hearing's closed. Did you have any other comment?
That was my only question.
Commissioner Pollan?
Just a follow-up question on that. So it looks from the exhibit map that we have here that the two parcels that were originally, that are on Road D were originally not included in this cannabis prohibition district. Is that correct?
No, it would be the opposite. Those were always included in the district.
So this
portion here where my cursor is, that was originally excluded. So
Okay.
the district follows this heavy black line, which kind of wrapped up and around.
Okay, thank you.
I'm totally confused now because I see a red line, not a black line.
I would like you to put the map up, existing cannabis. I want you to put our map up of the zone that's being requested.
This is the current boundary as proposed. The heavy black line
There you go.
represents the
Okay.
current boundary.
Right. Thank you. Now, I'm going to ask my fellow commissioners, do you have any questions for staff at this point?
No more for staff at this point.
And then take a minute here for Mike. So, do I have a motion?
Do we want to have discussion first or not? You
Well,
just want to start with a motion?
We could have discussion first.
I don't know.
Yeah, we could have discussion first if you'd prefer. Sometimes the motion with the second, then discussion, but that's okay. We open up for discussion because it is complicated. So, should I?
Yeah, you can
speak
start.
up?
Go
Right.
for it.
I first want to just thank everybody who's in this room and others who have sent comments in. I think it's really heartwarming to see community turnout, whatever side of the fence you're on. It gives me breath of why I'm up here, right? That we're working hard to figure out how to find the balance in communities and to bridge some of the gaps that happen in what I'm just going to call land use planning. So I want to just honor that. I think it's a very plus for a rural county to have participation. And coming out of COVID for 2 years and being on Zoom, it was very isolating. Right. So with that, I hear that this is complicated. I personally see both sides of the fence. I really hear the impact of what happens with marijuana, unfortunately, as an ag product. And I would say the smell is a big part of it. I also say that there has been, a negative history of renegade, and I'm not saying these permitted operations are negative, but we can't just ignore that that's been part of our last 20, 30 years here in this agriculture product. And it is a transition period for this particular project. So what I want to say is I want to support the protection for a residential and this is a mixed residential and ag parcel, which makes it much more complicated, right? And I'm certainly supporting adding an overlay to the residential for I'm trying to get the acronym for the zone, the CP zone, because I agree with some of the things saying, even though it's not permitted commercial growing of marijuana in a R1 zoning, we don't know what's going to happen down the road because there's always been changes. So I understand wanting that overlay, definitely. I support that for sure. I think the issue for me on this, and I actually support the whole zone, I'm just going to say that. The issue where it becomes complicated for, if I look at the map, for the two lower cannabis sites off of Road D, is that they did everything by permit. So what's happening is we have one arm of our county allowing these permits. They're trying to find where to grow, where to put it. It is ag land, right? And then the question is, but it still has an impact. And what's the nuisance? Now, the third grow, which I believe was actually illegal in the middle, and if you could show where that one is. I have a problem with that. That particular parcel, that particular owner grew without permits and actually created a huge nuisance. I did a little research on that. So I'm less favorable of that. And so what I want to look at, and this is up for discussion, is I want to give the community the CP zone, but I also want to look at the two parcels off of Road D, and if you can outline that on the map somehow. Can you draw it on? Yes. Okay. So this is the question. I don't want to, I think it's hard when people are trying to get permits and going through the whole process. There you go. And trying to do this, but the question is, it's still having impact to the RR zoning, and that's why this is difficult. And so I am definitely in support of the zone for the whole parcel, maybe, and I know these two are an impact, and I would say to these two people as neighbors, you have to figure out a way to deal with night sky, protecting the sky, and the smell. You have to come up with a better solution if you want to be good neighbors. Now, I can't regulate that. This board can't regulate that. But when we're looking for a solution, if I were to say, I have two solutions. One is either to support the whole zone or to separate out the lower quadrant. And if you could go along, I believe, yes, and there, that would be taken out. That would be my proposal based on what I said. And I pass that to my fellow commissioners for their comments.
You let me go first? Okay. Again, similar to Weed, I'd like to thank everybody for coming and participating and speaking your mind. It is extremely helpful for us to hear from everybody. I do feel like it's important to address the issue of racism. I don't want to step around that. I don't doubt that there was some racism, but I have a hard time imagining that everybody who submitted a letter or commented today has a racial perspective around this. I don't think all of the people who came here and spoke about their impacts that they're experiencing are lying about it, because to me, to take the time out of your day to write a letter or come and sit through a meeting You just don't do that if you're lying about something. You do that because it's actually impacted you. I think the Board of Supervisors made a mistake when they allowed cannabis cultivations without requiring a use permit. This Planning Commission recommended that they require use permits for that. And the reason we recommended that is to address these issues before a permit is approved, so that neighbors could come and speak their piece and we could hear what everybody had to say and then make a rational decision, instead of letting these permits rush out the door without providing the neighbors with the opportunity to comment. So as a consequence, we have this sort of after-the-fact process, which I think is extremely detrimental to everybody. It's detrimental to the neighbors because they have to organize and survey their neighborhood and come up with this combining zone and come in and complain and have this long process. It's extremely detrimental to the cannabis cultivators because they've invested a lot of money and time into their properties and their businesses that are now at risk. So I think, unfortunately, we are in this position because the Board of Supervisors lacked vision and lacked an understanding of the consequence of their actions. We sat through and listened to 7 hours of testimony about these regulations when they were initially proposed. And we felt as a commission very strongly that use permits should be required to address these concerns prior to approval of applications. That said, the board did, in their wisdom, recognize a way for communities to kind of opt out. From my perspective, I think the applicants have got enough votes, 66%, to effectively opt out. And for that reason, I would support the entire district as proposed. To the cannabis cultivators, I would say, if your neighbors are pissed off, you need to listen more carefully and address those concerns. And with that, that's my take on it.
Thanks. Well, I would echo my fellow commissioners' sentiments of appreciating people coming out and sharing their minds, and I also think that people are heartfelt in their concerns. I live in a rural part of the county where cannabis is also grown, and I know the personal impact that it can have on properties and on the quality of life. That being said, we also, have a legal cannabis system, and we have had policy direction that has been trying to move cannabis out of the hills and down into zones where it seems like it is deemed appropriate. And in all of our collective wisdom, through a very muddy process, it has been designated that agricultural lands should be the areas where cannabis is cultivated. I would also note that there are many areas of the county similar to Redwood Valley where there are residential properties in close proximity to ag properties. I think you'd be hard pressed to find very many areas in the county where that is not the case. And as a result, I do have concern about a precedent that this would set in terms of being able to put off limits the areas of the county that we have designated as appropriate for cannabis cultivation. I think water usage is a huge issue and it's a huge concern, and I also think that if we're going to have a legal cannabis system that is in place, we have protections that are put in place through the state and the county to monitor water usage, and we have to give the benefit of the doubt that those systems exist and can function, and if they don't, that there are other mechanisms and avenues available for pursuing remedies if that is needed to be happening. Let's see, what else would I want to say about this? I do think the fact that 60% of this zone is zoned for agriculture usage is a concern for me, and that is the area that we want to be able to, that we have designated as areas that are available for cannabis cultivation. And I do recognize that cannabis cultivation is different than wine grape cultivation. particularly as it results in smells that seem like they are more challenging to mitigate than some of the other issues that have been raised, that I do think the applicant has spoken to very clearly on how they have or how they will mitigate those impacts. But that being said, there are impacts to all agricultural uses that we have a right to farm laws in this state that allow those impacts to take place. And you know, if someone wanted to set up a hog farm, they would be allowed to do so, even though it presents challenges to the neighbors as well. I think, again, the fact that 60% of this is zoned for ag, and that a majority of the number of respondents are in an area that is not zoned, that cannot be cultivated in currently, is problematic. And it is true that we don't know what the future will hold, but we do have a legislative process that if there are attempts to allow for cultivation to occur in RR1 zoning in the future, there are opportunities at that point to object to that. So I personally am not in favor of this cannabis prohibition zone. And I do think that if it were to go forward, that the exclusion of the two properties on Road D would be more than justified, in as much as that they have done all that they can do to comply with all of the hurdles that have been put forth for cannabis cultivation, and at this point to penalize them when there are other properties that are in as close or closer proximity to residential areas that are going to be impacted that will not be included in the zone feels highly inequitable to me. I also just want to make a few points about a few comments that were made from the commission and from the from public comment that I just think need to be addressed. One was that a comment was made that perhaps there had been intentional stalling at the April 20th meeting, and as someone that drove a long way and spent a long time to be here today, that day to hear this matter, I can assure you that that was not the case. I, as much as anyone else in this room, was disappointed that we were not able to hear it on that day. It just was what happened with commissioners being ill and injured and sick and having to recuse themselves, and it was unfortunate, but there was no intention to stall on that day. I also heard a comment made that the presence of security cameras on these grows, indicates somehow that there's illegal activity that's taking place, and those requirements, as far as I know, are requirements that the state has put in place to hopefully improve security and reduce criminality around these types of activities. So I think that should not be used to penalize what is taking place there. And then the last is around the cultivation site that is on Road E. From what I understood from testimony here today, that the activity that in question that resulted in the raid that happened last year was not taken by the owner of that property, but by a lessee who was on that, who is no longer in control of that property. And so again, to penalize the owner of that, I can understand that sentiment, but it feels a little bit unjust as well. So that's my position at the moment. Thank you.
All right. I would like to keep going on this dialogue between us as commissioners. I am very clear that I support this zone. It was, as I said previously, that I certainly can support the whole zone. There is that. But I do feel we have a contradiction of departments, right? Allowing people to go forward to get a cannabis permit and then investing and trying to be, kind of upfront citizens in this transitional time. And I don't really want to penalize that, okay? And at the same time, I think everybody can hear in this room the impacts. And I would plead with, if we propose excluding this parcel that we have shown here, Road D, off of Road D, I really would hope you mitigate the issues that your neighbors have said. Start making the bridges, both sides, right? Because that's where it's going to go. Now, mind you, we're only suggesting, this goes to the Board of Supervisors, right? So, and I would hope that you would all show up there too, because it's very valuable, your input. So with that, can I get a motion?
Sure, I'll move. I'll move that we recommend with option number 1, which is to recommend approval of the entire district. And let me tell you why I'm recommending that, Weed. Because I'm sure the Board of Supervisors will hear this same discussion, and if they want to carve out an exception for the properties on Road E, they certainly can do so, and maybe would. I think the problem with us not including those parcels is it's more likely that they will just automatically not consider whether to include them or exclude them, and then they will just consider whether to apply the zone to the entire rest of the area or not. So I think it gives the Board of Supervisors a little bit more options. You know, I am conscious of the investment that the property owners have made in these properties. So if you want to vote against or not second my motion, I would then go to the third option.
So you're making a motion to support the whole district as drawn?
That's correct.
All right.
He's not going to second it.
I have to pass the gavel. And so the vice chair is now going to be the chair. You can ask for my motion.
Is there a second on that motion?
I will second the motion before us that we include the whole district.
Okay. Any further discussion from the commission? Deputy County Counsel, any procedure as the stepping in as the chair, any procedural motions that I need to make?
Deputy County Counsel Matthew Kudrowski, I might note that maybe take this as a tentative motion. The recommendation of the Planning Commission has to be in writing, and so if the motion is approved, we may need to have some discussion of what to put into the resolution. So I think we're talking about whether, at the face of it, going forward with the entire district would have the support of the commission, and then we have to get the findings written up in a resolution. We can talk about that.
Yeah, and I assumed, would you take a break to clean up the resolution?
That's correct.
Yeah, okay. So the only comments I have is y'all better come out, all of you, for the Board of Supervisors meeting, because there's no way of predicting that they will vote as we have.
So we'll take a, how much time do you need, County Counsel, to?
Deputy County Counsel Matthew Kudrowski, we haven't had a tentative motion or a vote on what to do on this yet.
Do we need to actually have the resolution language in place to make a vote on it?
I think we need to know where the commission's going with it. That's the reason for the tentative vote. That being said, I will note, since this is a report and recommendation to the board on an ordinance amendment or rezone, it does need to be a majority of the commission. So given the quorum today, it would have to be a 3-0 vote to move something forward.
That's weird.
We have option, we can just do the option 1.
No, he's saying that in order to provide a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors, it has to be a 3-0 vote. And essentially, it wouldn't move forward. Is that correct? Or we would have no recommendation?
Deputy County Counsel Matthew Kudrowski. So to make there has to be, it's in the government code, there's a requirement for the Planning Commission. It needs to be a majority of the commission. Only for other matters where it isn't going to the board, like a use permit, could it be a majority of the quorum present. So in terms of any particular motion or recommendation to the board, a 3-0 vote would be required. In the past, commissions have made no recommendation to the board. We also would have the possibility to continue the item. There was one additional potential commissioner who would be able to hear the item, but is not present today, noting that it's uncertain as to what that continuance would look like or if that person would be able to attend. So there's some options, but before we can move forward with even drafting something, we'd have to know if there was consensus of the 3 members of the commission here for us to move forward on that motion.
So I have a question. If we vote to continue the hearing, would we have to reopen for public comment? Or would the other commissioner be able to review the entire tape and then just make a decision at the next hearing? I just don't want to make all these people come out 3 times. Seems kind of mean.
The public hearing has been closed by the chair. I would note that it's been chair discretion in the past whether they wanted to reopen it. That has happened, I think, both at commission and board level. So that's a decision for this chair to make if we're going forward. But if we kept the hearing closed, yes, that person would be able to review the tape and then deliberate.
Okay, thank you.
But they would, they would have to have done that. And
right. No, I understand that.
Yes, Commissioner Wiedemann.
Thank you. So I'm not in favor of continuing this. I would pass it to the Board of Supes if we can't get 3 votes. And so we're looking, I don't think we're going to get 3 votes because you're not even going to support the opt-out for the D-Road folks, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so you're not supporting this. I just want to understand your position.
I'm not.
Straight out.
I'm not supporting the Cannabis Prohibition District.
Okay, all right. So since we cannot do it with a majority of votes, I suggest we move it to that can we go down on record of what we're trying to do?
If I may, just procedurally, please, before you make any additional motions, either rescind the prior motion before you make any additional ones or call for the roll call vote. But if you were to forward the item to the board without a recommendation, the direction in the past has been for planning staff to essentially summarize the proceedings and discussion during the planning commission hearing, so that way the board is able to see that discussion that happened that may have affected a split vote between the commissioners.
I would like roll call vote to be in the record.
Okay, Commissioner Wiedemann.
Yes.
Commissioner Jones.
Yes.
Chair Pollen.
No.
Motion does not pass with Commissioner Pollen dissenting.
Give me back the gavel. Chair Wiedemann takes the gavel back. So with that, staff, you're going to move this, you're going to write this motion that failed, and then this process goes to the Board of Supes for, I'm sharing this for.
So, Deputy County Counsel Matthew Kudrowski, can you give us 5 minutes just to clarify some wording for a proposed motion?
Sure.
Thank you.
We're going to take a 5-minute break, and we'll resume at noon, briefly.
Yo creo que si conozco a alguien que está próxima a ser mamá, lo primero que haría sería recomendarle el programa, porque te entrega mucho apoyo, mucha información y más que nada como apoyo emocional, una guía, te da una visión diferente de cómo es ser papá aquí, quizás en este país.
Sí, pues es un bonito programa, porque pues es buena persona la señora y los ha atendido muy bien.
Pensé que nada más iba a ser un programa de orientación quizás para los nuevos padres, pero creo que nos llevamos una linda sorpresa porque Gaby es una persona muy cercana a nosotros, es como parte de nuestra familia, siempre ha estado dispuesta a ayudarnos y a escucharnos con nuestras dudas sobre la paternidad, y en nuestro caso, que estamos solos en este país, ha sido como de mucha ayuda.
Es un gran apoyo para nuevos padres, y más aún si están en nuestra situación, que somos extranjeros, que nuestra familia y amigos, como dice Carla, están en otro país, lejos. Entonces sí, viene muy bien el programa para apoyarse tanto emocional y como anímicamente, y bueno, en varios aspectos del programa que nos ayuda a seguir adelante con esta nueva aventura.
Te ayuda como a ver los distintos recursos que tiene la comunidad para nuevos papás. Entonces creo que es de gran ayuda.
No queda mucho que agregar, pero lo veo de la misma forma.
Que hemos aprendido algunas cosas aquí y pues los han ayudado, como este programa los ha ayudado para seguir creciendo a la bebé, como con buenos consejos y así.
Sí, y creo que también ha sido muy importante el tema de apoyarnos con el libro y saber qué actividades hacer con Máximo de acuerdo a su edad, cómo estimularlo, cómo cuidarlo de los peligros de la casa, como cosas que uno como papá nuevo no conoce, claro.
Pues a mí me gustaría que lo siguiéramos visitando aquí en la biblioteca de Covelo. Está tranquilo y muy bonito aquí.
Cuando no nos podemos reunir, nos comunicamos por Zoom o una llamada telefónica o por texto.
Donde nos visite, porque ha sido nuestra casa, a veces nosotros vamos a Wellits y puede ser en el parque. Gaby llega, hacemos un resumen de cómo ha ido nuestra semana o qué hemos hecho de nuevo, cómo va el trabajo. Luego hacemos las actividades del libro, vemos si podemos hacer un juguetito nuevo para Máximo, a veces ella lo evalúa, cómo está su sentido motriz, qué ha aprendido de nuevo, nuevas palabras, y jugamos un ratito y conversamos.
A mí personalmente también me ayudó mucho a obtener mi licencia a conducir, que era un objetivo que teníamos en cuanto a la familia,
sí.
para poder estar tranquilos, así que encuentro que ha sido fundamental el apoyo.
El objetivo del programa es que las familias estén bien, y que las familias estén bien significan niños felices, niños sanos, y eso en un futuro es adultos sanos y un mundo mejor. Entonces está bueno.
Back to order at 12 o'clock. Please take your seats. And can you read or put up would you just read the resolution that didn't pass?
So Deputy County Counsel Matthew Kudrowski, I think I can confirm that the motion to approve the district in its full form failed on a 2-1 vote, and we were given direction at the break to come back with a motion to still forward this to the board. So the motion I can read into the record. There's no resolution. Given that the commission is deadlocked, it would be that the motion would be the Planning Commission recommends this project, R2021-0002, be moved to the Board of Supervisors without a recommendation from the Planning Commission, and direct staff to provide a summary of the proceedings in the staff report to the Board of Supervisors.
Fine.
Also move.
Second.
Can we have roll call vote?
Commissioner Pollan,
Yes.
Commissioner Jones,
Yes.
Chair Wiedemann.
Yes.
Motion passes 3-0.
All right. Thank you very much for coming in. Please do show up at the Board of Supervisors because they're going to need to hear your voices and your positions as this matter moves forward. And good luck to you all.
If I may, through the chair, I just want to note for the benefit of the public, the hearing in front of the Board of Supervisors will also be noticed, so adjacent landowners will receive public notice. It'll also be in the local newspaper when that has been scheduled. So, thank you.
All right. We're going to go on to the next item. So agenda item 6B, case UM 2022-0002, modification and renewal of coastal development use permit of an existing communications facilities to remove 3 existing cellular antennas and replace with 3 new, but slightly larger antennas, along with adding equipment to the existing cabinet located within the lease area at the base of the tower. The requested renewal is being processed concurrently with the modification to add another 10-year timeline or time period to the existing entitlement. I'm opening public hearing, and do we have any correspondence in writing or by telephone?
The one correspondence I received has been posted online.
Okay. Can we have staff presentation?
Yes, thank you. Julia Krog, Planning and Building Services Director. I'm filling in for Keith Gronendijk today, who was unable to attend today. So please bear with me. I am not the project planner, but I'm going to do my best. So this use permit modification and renewal is located on a property that's about 3 miles southeast of the city of Point Arena on the west side of 10 Mile Road at 25470 10 Mile Road in Point Arena. The tower itself was built in the 1990s. You'll see in the related applications that there was a use permit, number 45, in 1990 that was approved in 1991 to allow for the development of the tower. Then in 2005, there was an additional use permit done to legitimize the existing tower. I'm not quite certain on the exact history, but it sounds like perhaps there was some procedural errors that resulted in the use permit in 2005 being processed as well. And so this particular project today is really a minor modification to the tower itself and renewing the entitlement for the 10-year period. The applicants had originally submitted for just a modification to the tower, and during the application review, we determined that the use permit was expired for the underlying tower. That is when the renewal was added to this permit as well. The general plan and zoning for the property is remote residential, and wireless communication facilities are an allowable conditional use within the district. They're major impact services and utilities. The project is consistent with any zoning standards for the district as well. Then when we talk about local coastal program consistency, this particular property is located within a highly scenic area and is subject to highly scenic area policies. Now, when the tower, as I noted, was originally in a use permit in 1990, which was after approval of the county's coastal element of the general plan, but prior to adoption of the implementation program, the zoning regulations. It was noted within the use permit that the proposed project was consistent with policy 3.11-9 of the coastal element, which relates to highly scenic areas. But just to be clear, the highly scenic overlay and the zoning provisions were not yet in place at that time. In terms of habitats and natural resources, the project as proposed does not plan to alter any of the surrounding area, and there is no removal of ground equipment that would affect any natural resources. So as such, county staff determined that the project is consistent with habitat and natural resource policies for the county. In regards to hazard management, there aren't many concerns with this particular site. Sorry, it sounded like my mic cut out there for a second with this particular site, other than fire. So you'll see in the staff report there was discussion about CAL FIRE, which did provide comment on this particular project and requested that a 300-foot buffer area around the facility be maintained, and condition 25 in the resolution addresses this requirement. There are no concerns related to grading, erosion, and runoff, archaeological or cultural resources, as those were previously evaluated in prior use permits for this site. There's no concerns regarding groundwater resources, as the proposed development does not require the use of water or septic infrastructure. Transportation and circulation, also no concerns here because all the access is already existing and developed and has been developed for 30 plus years at this point. With regards to required mandatory findings, the project is consistent with required findings underneath the local coastal program, and those are detailed on pages 6 and 7 of the staff report, as well as within the resolution. In terms of the wireless communication facilities development guidelines, these have not yet been formally adopted within the coastal zone. However, staff still did an analysis with regards to the project's consistency with those guidelines and did find that the project is consistent with the guidelines. In terms of environmental protection, our CEQA requirements, this is an existing facility, so staff has determined that this is a Class 1 exemption from CEQA for existing development. That concludes my presentation. I'm more than happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any commissioner have any questions or comments for staff? Seeing none, do we have the applicant presentation? Is there any applicant presentation?
I am looking online. I don't see any hands raised at this time.
Okay.
For public comment, I do.
Okay. So, seeming that there's no applicant comment, we'll move to public comment. So may we have public comment?
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
My name is Anne-Marie Weibel. I disagree that the proposed development is well suited for small-scale farming, light agriculture, and will not interfere with the continued use of the parcel. I would not want to have radiated food, have my animals radiated, live 24/7 next to 2 towers, and have my property devalued. There's no mention about the other tower, other than it is shown on the map approximately 300 feet away. That tower that will be serviced by T-Mobile now was 100 feet in 87 and got replaced by a 140-foot tower in 99. Other companies co-located. What about the cumulative effect of having these towers right next to each other and for additional antennas? The closest neighbor is apparently 2,050 feet away, and studies in Brazil showed that close to 7,000 people died from cancerous tumors if they lived within 500 to 1,000 meters from a cell tower. Now, 3 antennas will be replaced by 3 new ones and larger antennas, in addition to adding equipment to How large were the old ones? How large would the new ones be? How much more frequency will they emit? Has anyone looked at the cumulative effect of all the antennas, even those from other companies? The site has 3 propane tanks. What are the sizes of the tank? What if they explode? In addition, there's a diesel generator and an electric generator. What type of equipment will be added? There's no information about the fire danger of this property. The site is designated as highly scenic, and would not the larger antennas have an effect on that and therefore need a mitigated negative declaration? There's no information about the sensitive plant. We know that these towers not only endanger humans, but plants and animals as well. And Arthur Furstenberg wrote, wireless technology, which has placed a source of lethal radiation into the hands of almost everybody, is such an emergency that must come rapidly to an end if we're to save our planet and the millions of other species who are still trying to share it with us. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you. Do we have any other comments on telecommenting?
I have no more members of the public for telecomment.
Okay, so seeing that, let's see, okay, I'll close the public comment period, and then I'll ask if staff has any final remarks.
I do not have any final remarks.
There's no applicant, so I don't think there's any final remarks from the applicant. And then I will go to the commission if you have any questions for staff. Seeing no questions, do I have a motion? And I close public hearing first. And then I'll ask for see if there's a motion.
I've been asked to make the motion, so I move that we adopt the resolution to approve UM-2022-002 Barracuda Tower LLC, subject to all the conditions of approval and the new conditions of approval.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, could we have roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Pollan.
Yes.
Commissioner Jones.
Yes.
Chair Whedon.
Yes.
Motion passes 3-0.
Okay, great. So that takes us to item 7, matters from staff. Do we have any matters from staff today?
Pardon me, Chair Wiedemann. There is item 6C, which is the discussion and possible action regarding a change to the bylaws.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I guess I'm trying to move it ahead. Let me go back. 6C, on the regular calendar. Yes, we do have a discussion and possible action for the Planning Commission bylaws, which is to start the meetings later in the morning till 10 a.m. So I'll open the public hearing. Do we have? Okay. Well, it says open the public hearing here. Okay, yeah. Hearing, public comment. Let me, Jim. Okay, are there any, from the clerk, any correspondence or telephone calls on this?
I did not receive any phone calls or correspondence.
And do we have any to discuss this proposed amendment from my fellow commissioners?
Pardon me, Chair Wiedemann, you do have a public comment online.
I do. Okay.
Hi, commissioners. It's Anne-Marie Weibel again, and I have no problem with what's proposed in terms of the bylaw change, but I really would encourage you to change the bylaws to reflect that now your commission is much smaller. And in the case of an even number of commissioners, the public at one of the meetings had no chance to appeal a decision because of the way the bylaw was worded. I brought that to your attention before, and I'm hoping that you can work on that bylaw change. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Anybody else on?
No more members of the public on Zoom.
All right, so I'm closing this public comment or hearing. And now the matters before the commission. I'm inviting a motion.
And if I may
Do
just
we want
comment.
to have a little bit of discussion first?
Okay.
Yeah.
And if I may just comment, if the commission does choose to adopt this change to the bylaws today, we have already noticed projects for both meetings in June, so this would really be becoming effective in July, and I'm looking to our administrative staff to confirm that it would be the first meeting in July, July 6th, that we could accommodate this.
So we already have the 9 o'clock in June? How come?
We have 30-day noticing requirements.
Okay.
Yeah, unfortunately,
I see
the
today.
timing
I
just
see.
didn't quite
Got it,
work
got it,
out.
got it. Okay. No problem. So let's have discussion.
Oh, well, thanks, Marie. Well, I guess I'd like to say two things. One, I guess maybe I would like to, I know we've kicked this can down the road before, but there's but 3 of us here, and it would be nice to hear from the full commission about their preference before we make a decision that impacts all of us. So I would leave it at that. One other thing I would just say is that I empathize with the long distances that people have to drive to be here. I have had to do that many times myself. But finishing earlier in the day for me is a stronger priority, and that the county hasn't gotten any bigger since this commission has been in existence, and people have been driving long distance, arriving at 9 o'clock, and for the rest of the public and for staff and for everyone else, I think being accommodating to finishing earlier, to me, makes starting at 9 o'clock a preference. And so if we were to take a vote today, I would be not supporting a move to 10 o'clock, but I would also really highly encourage us to not take that vote today until we can hear from the other commissioners, if y'all are amenable to that.
Commissioner Jones?
So I hear you. I will just say, for me, driving from Fort Bragg, we have quite a lot of construction on Highway 20. So it's actually taking an hour and 45 minutes to get here, which means that I leave my house at 7 a.m. Just to be sure that I get here on time. And I also am conscious of the fact that we have occasionally items for people from the coast, and all those people would also need to drive that long distance if there is an item from the coast. I would like to propose maybe a hybrid alternative, which would be trying to be conscious of your thing. Like, how about if we start at 9:30 between the months of April and October, and we start at, I guess 10 between the months of
The winter months.
October and April, when it's really dark and we're driving on dark, wet roads that are dangerous, and you can't go quite as fast. And so would all the public who would want to come and speak at such a meeting.
I want to comment on that. I would say that's not a bad idea, the hybrid, if we can do that, and I'll refer to staff in a minute, because we have 10 o'clock. I want you to understand, we do have 10 o'clock. We have met at 10 o'clock for the winter months, right? It got, you kind of came in during a COVID period. So I'm just, there's history. So we're not changing, it drastically. And I know you have your personal stuff too. I get that. So, but I'm looking at really, I like the hybrid because I think if we can start at 9:30, that gets you out earlier. That half hour can help us when we have that construction. And so I actually would entertain that hybrid because it keeps the 10 o'clock for the winter months, which is the most important. And staff, is that a possibility to do a hybrid at this point? To change that?
We can certainly take direction on it to write it up, however you direct that to write
All
up
right,
the
so
bylaws.
I'm gonna ask for a motion on that, Marie.
All right, so I'd like to move that we change our bylaws so that we have a summer period, which will extend from April 1st through October 1st, and will consist of a meeting start time of 9:30, and then a winter period that will start on October 2nd and persist through March 30th or 31st, whatever the date is. That would be a winter period, and we would start our meetings at 10.
Do I have a second?
Just looking at Deputy County Counsel, is that clear of what that bylaw amendment would look like?
Deputy County Counsel Matthew Kudrowski, through the chair. If you want us to give us 2 minutes to write something up to put it on the screen, we can do that.
That would be great.
Okay.
Do we need a second before we write that up?
That would be lovely, and then just, I need to hear the dates again. I'm sorry, it was April 1st too.
April 1st through, what did I say, October 1st?
October 1st.
And then it would be, the winter period would be October 2nd through March 31st. So just trying to catch when the daylight savings time clicks in.
You could do September 31st, so that it ends at the month.
That's fine.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't
because sometimes we have first meeting, first week. Be better to end at the end of the month.
Thank you.
So is the motion now to use those dates that Commissioner Wiedemann, or that Chair Wiedemann suggested?
Yes, I accept the friendly amendment to the motion.
Okay, I'll second that motion, and
They'll write it
and we'll write it up, and we'll come back and vote here in a minute.
Okay. So we'll take what do you need? A few minutes? 5 minutes break. And we'll return at 12:30.
Oh, yeah, I'm not some inflexible, dogmatic.
Well, and I think the reality is like a half an hour difference.
It's not
For most
meetings.
Personally, I think everybody could benefit from the home visiting programs.
I think that as a parent now, I'm grateful for support more than I was before.
I filled out that form not knowing what I was doing. I am very, very grateful that I did it because it's really helping me a lot.
Bueno, creo que por mi parte esperaba algo totalmente diferente, como un programa más frío, por decir algo, no tan cercano a la familia. Y a través del programa nos hemos dado cuenta que también pasa a ser una familia con nosotros porque nos apoya en los momentos difíciles o cuando nos hemos visto en dificultades.
Well, I was a new mom and I had no experience taking care of a newborn.
There isn't like a book on how to raise a kid.
We come from like a lot of family history of, drugs, violence, alcoholism, so we didn't want our daughter to experience any of that.
The thought that a parent was supposed to be loving, nurturing, supposed to be there for their kid, provide food, shelter, joy, and going in, becoming a parent for her, I had no clue how to provide that.
¿Cómo pensar educarla? Ajá. Cómo educar a un hijo porque pues nosotros nunca, es la primera vez que íbamos a ser padres.
What I think parents should know about home visiting is that you can learn a lot of new things and tips and tricks, how to take care of the baby and what to do, and if you're, stuck in a routine and everything being monotonous, like they give you new resources and new tools how to handle parenthood.
It was nice to have them kind of guiding me, even though I was not a first-time mom. I felt like a first-time mom.
It totally blew my mind over time. So much information that I had no idea about. She was straightforward when, teaching me this stuff and answered any of my questions. It's just a really positive experience.
What I think that parents could benefit with the program is just having someone here for you, especially for first-time parents. It can be very isolating and it can be very lonely, and having the home visitor changes that and it feels very good.
For me, having a home visitor is like having a second mom there.
A lot has changed. I'm definitely more knowledgeable taking care of her. And I know that anytime I need advice or help from somebody, I can just call her.
It's just that little positive nudge to, hey, I'm noticing something, let's find a way how to change it. And she's like, you know what, Amanda, let's pick you up, dust you off, and let's go over to, see about either getting your driver's license or seeing about, going to college, see if we can start something for you.
It's totally worth it. Like, even if you're on the fence at first, you don't feel like having a stranger coming in your house and teaching you about your little one, do it anyway. You get the help that you need. You get professional advice on things you may not know about your child. The fact that the program has no fees or anything, it's all totally free, is fantastic.
Yo creo que si conozco a alguien que está próxima a ser mamá, lo primero que haría sería recomendarle el programa, porque te entrega mucho apoyo, mucha información y más que nada como apoyo emocional, una guía, te da una visión diferente de cómo es ser papá aquí, quizás en este país.
Y así pues es algo, un bonito programa, porque pues es buena persona la señora y los ha atendido muy bien.
Pensé que nada más iba a ser un programa de orientación quizás para los nuevos padres, pero creo que nos llevamos una linda sorpresa porque Gaby es una persona muy cercana a nosotros, es como parte de nuestra familia, siempre ha estado dispuesta a ayudarnos y a escucharnos con nuestras dudas sobre la paternidad, y en nuestro caso, que estamos solos en este país, ha sido como de mucha ayuda.
Es un gran apoyo para nuevos padres, y más aún si están en nuestra situación, que somos extranjeros, que nuestra familia y amigos, como dice Carla, están en otro país, lejos. Entonces sí, viene muy bien el programa para apoyarse tanto emocional y como anímicamente, y bueno, en varios aspectos del programa que nos ayuda a seguir adelante con esta nueva aventura.
Te ayuda como a ver los distintos recursos que tiene la comunidad para nuevos papás, entonces creo que es de gran ayuda.
No queda mucho que agregar, pero lo veo de la misma forma.
Que hemos aprendido algunas cosas aquí y pues los han ayudado, como este programa los ha ayudado para seguir creciendo a la bebé, como con buenos consejos y así.
So I don't have the motion to read back, but I have on the screen here the change that I understood from Commissioner Jones, which was to have I'll just read it out. This is section 7 in the bylaws. The meeting shall commence at 9:30 a.m. between April 1st and September 30th, and at 10 a.m. between October 1st and March 31st. In the Board of Supervisors chambers in Ukiah, California, unless otherwise noticed for a different location or time on the agenda.
The only thing, does March actually have 31 days or just 30?
It does have 31 days.
Okay, great. Yes. Thank you. All right.
Deputy County Counsel, just through the chair, one thing to add to the motion being made is that this change be effective July 1st of this year.
All right. Did you add that?
I accept the friendly amendment from the attorney.
All right. Can we have roll call vote?
Sure. Commissioner Pollan.
Yes.
Commissioner Jones.
Yes.
Chair Wiedemann.
Yes.
Motion passes 3-0.
Okay, thank you. Now that will move us on to...
Can I ask one more question before we leave this item?
Yes.
Just as a point of interest. Does the Planning Commission ever hold a meeting on the coast? Like, for example, if you had an agenda that had a couple of items that had to do with coastal activities?
The commission can, we just need advance notice of it. It hasn't happened in a number of years, is what I will say, but I know that in the past there had been traveling meetings. So.
Well, I'd like the staff to consider that option if we have, one or two matters before us that are coastal, just to share the commuting.
We're not driving over the hill.
Hey, you got 9:30. So, all right. Now we're going to move on. Did you get answered, Commissioner Jones? A satisfied answer?
Yes, I did. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we're moving on to item number 7, matters from staff. Do we have any more matters from staff today?
No matters from staff, thank you.
All right. And then we go to item number 8, matters from the commission. Do we have other matters from the commission other than driving over the hill?
Hey, don't belittle it. I
I'm
think
not,
it's a
no.
fair
I'm a coast commissioner. I hear that. Oh, any other matters? No, seeing that there's no matters, I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn.
Don't we have to approve the minutes?
We
Oh,
already
right, 'cause
did.
we did those as the consent.
We already did that.
Okay, sorry.
So a motion to, I'm inviting a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Seconded.
All right.
Aye.
Aye. We're all good. Adjourned at 12:34.
Yay, team.
All right. Thank you.